means we didn't bore you too much yesterday. It means we didn't bore you so much yesterday. I thought I should just recap what is it that we did yesterday and introduce the day today. I think you remember that we tried to give you a sense of what this project is about and the underpinning frameworks that are guiding the project. And then we went into a discussion where we also had presentations from 5 countries. And these were very rich presentations. We had given out some guidelines on what it is that they should speak about, and they did so faithfully. And then we had a discussion, which also brought out quite a few ideas, including pointing out, for instance, that we needed to look at the legislative or the legal framework within which this work is going to be done. But also, it underscored the importance of political will, something that the project actually had envisaged, and we had intended that before we come to the pilot countries, we would have to have President Mbeki lead the way, go into some countries, meet with the political leaders, and try to garner their support so that the technicians can then get on with the work. Unfortunately, COVID-19 came about, and we've not been able to do this. So we are going on a technical level, fully conscious that we'll have to do a bit some work on the political side of things. So that is just by way of recapping of what happened yesterday. Today we have 2 sessions. The first session, again, is about member states sharing what is it that exists in their countries, and if they can also pick up on the point that was mentioned yesterday, mention something about the legal framework, if it does exist or if it doesn't, in your presentations today. And then after that, we shall move into another session, the last session, which will be looking at, among other things, the guidelines for how we are going to do this, but also try to shape the way forward for us, what happens after today. So without much ado, allow me to hand over to our colleague, Douglas Kigabo Bitonda, who is going to be moderating this session. Douglas, over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Merci, Alain, pour me passer la parole. Je vais essayer de parler en français, mais aussi en anglais. Ça dépendra de qui va venir après moi. Je suis le modérateur de cette session et nous allons immédiatement passer aux présentations respectives des différents pays. Nous avons au total 6 pays, 6 pas 7, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Gabon, Nigeria, Sénégal et Afrique du Sud, qui vont se suivre à tour de rôle. Mais avant de passer au premier pays présentateur d'aujourd'hui, qui est le Burkina Faso, je voudrais rappeler à nos chers présentateurs d'essayer de ne pas être trop rapide en présentant pour faciliter la tâche des interprétateurs. Ça, c'est à partir de la leçon qu'on a apprise hier. Certains présentateurs ont essayé d'être très rapides, ce qui a un peu compliqué la tâche du service d'interprétation. Nous allons vous demander d'essayer d'y aller lentement pour que l'interprétateur puisse capter le message et le transmettre de manière précise et comme il le faut. Et sans prendre assez de temps, je vais inviter le représentant de Burkina Faso d'afficher sa présentation et d'y aller immédiatement pour la présentation des flux financiers illicites dans le pays de Burkina. Quelqu'un de Burkina est là? Et s'il y a quelqu'un de Burkina, is there someone from Burkina Faso who can start?
Allô?
Allô, on t'écoute?
Oui,
Karim?
allô?
Tu es là, Karim?
Oui. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Vous êtes capable de partager votre présentation sur l'écran afin que tout le monde puisse suivre? Si vous avez des difficultés, on peut vous aider.
Écran partagé. Ah, ça, non? FFI, le 16, là. Partagé. Je pense que c'est fait maintenant.
Voilà, on peut voir. On peut le voir.
D'accord. D'accord. Merci. J'espère que vous m'entendez, hein?
On vous entend parfaitement.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Moi, c'est Sommet Placide. J'utilise l'ordinateur de M. Sarah Karim, un collaborateur, parce que j'ai un problème de micro.
OK.
Donc, la présentation va se présenter et se structurer autour de 3 axes, notamment les structures nationales en charge de la problématique des FFI. En deuxième point, les FFI pertinents pour le Burkina Faso. Et le troisième point sera relatif au projet pilote. Donc, dans ce troisième point, nous allons décliner nos attentes, les attentes du Burkina Faso relativement au projet. Donc, pour ce qui concerne le premier point, on a une panoplie de structures qui sont rattachées à différents ministères qui sont en charge de la lutte contre les FFI. Donc, il y a notamment le ministère de la Justice, le ministère de l'Économie et des Finances, le ministère des Affaires étrangères, le ministère de la Sécurité, et puis aussi au niveau associatif, on a le réseau national de la lutte contre la corruption qui est le RENLAC. Donc, à côté de cela, on a une autorité supérieure de contrôle de l'État dont le rôle est d'évaluer la gestion financière, notamment des différentes structures administratives, particulièrement celles qui brassent beaucoup de sous. Donc, de façon spécifique au niveau du ministère de la Justice, on peut citer la Direction générale de la justice pénale et du sceau. Donc, c'est un premier point. Et de la même manière, les tribunaux de grande instance aussi interviennent dans le cadre des enquêtes parallèles sur le blanchiment des capitaux. Il y a aussi, comme je l'ai constaté hier aussi pour certains pays, la cellule nationale de traitement des informations financières, CENTIF, dont le rôle également est bien connu, qui est au niveau du ministère de l'Économie et des Finances. Deux autres structures du ministère de l'Économie et des Finances sont la Direction générale des douanes, que nous connaissons bien, et la Direction générale des impôts en charge de la mise en œuvre de la politique fiscale au Burkina Faso notamment. Donc, ce qu'on peut dire au niveau du réseau, le dernier point, le réseau national de lutte contre la corruption, c'est une structure aujourd'hui qui est reconnue d'utilité publique, dont le rôle est de mener des enquêtes suivant des méthodologies statistiques, parfois, mais de dénoncer tout manquement en ce qui concerne la bonne gestion des finances publiques. Et les exemples qu'on a sont légion, c'est qu'après la publication de leur rapport sur certains manquements au niveau de la gestion des finances publiques, l'autorité judiciaire se saisit et mène des investigations pour aboutir à des sentences parfois punitives ou alors pour éclairer l'opinion sur la véracité des dénonciations qui ont été faites. Donc, après, toujours au niveau des structures nationales, il faut dire qu'il y a des initiatives auxquelles le Burkina Faso a adhéré. Donc, je vais les citer un peu rapidement. Au niveau du ministère de la Justice, il y a donc depuis 2017, avec l'appui de la Direction générale des impôts, de la Direction générale des douanes, il y a un plan d'action de lutte contre les activités financières illicites au Burkina Faso. Sa mise en œuvre n'est pas encore effective, mais le plan d'action est déjà disponible. De même, il y a eu la ratification de la Convention concernant l'assistance administrative en matière fiscale. Donc, c'est déposé. Je peux voir ici. Voilà, en matière fiscale. Donc, le pays s'apprête à déposer les instruments auprès du Forum mondial sur la transparence et l'échange de renseignements. Il y a également la ratification de la Convention multilatérale pour la mise en œuvre des mesures relatives aux conventions fiscales pour prévenir l'érosion de la base d'imposition et le transfert des bénéfices. De la même manière, le pays est membre du cadre inclusif du BEPS, qui est le mécanisme pour l'érosion, pour prévenir l'érosion de la base d'imposition et le transfert des bénéfices. Dans ce sens, il bénéficie de renforcement de capacités sur la fraude fiscale internationale. Donc, étant membre étant partie prenante du programme du Forum, il bénéficie de certaines sous-initiatives telles que former le formateur. Donc, on est également bénéficiaire au niveau du Burkina Faso du programme Inspecteur des impôts sans frontières. Et enfin, nous sommes membres de l'initiative pour la transparence fiscale en Afrique. Donc, après, s'il y a des questions, les différents spécialistes dans le domaine pourront compléter les propos. Pour ce qui concerne les FFI pertinents pour le Burkina Faso, on a essayé d'aller un peu directement. Il se résume principalement en 5 ou 6 éléments que sont la fraude fiscale, l'évasion fiscale, le blanchiment des capitaux, la corruption, le détournement de deniers publics et la cybercriminalité. Donc, on estime que si des efforts sont faits pour ces différents éléments cités, cela permettra au Burkina d'assainir, ses deniers publics et bien entendu, d'assainir ses finances publiques et bien entendu de faire des économies en termes de ressources qui pourraient être réinjectées dans le développement économique et social du pays. Ce qui concerne les attentes du pays relativement au projet, comme c'est une initiative nouvelle que, bien entendu, l'INSD s'est porté volontaire pour proposer le Burkina Faso, avec, bien entendu, les autres structures que sont la direction des impôts, des douanes et les autres parties prenantes au niveau du ministère de la Justice, nous avons estimé que l'initiative était à saluer et qu'il fallait s'y engager. Et principalement, ce que nous attendons, c'est une formation sur l'identification des méthodes d'investigation sur les FFI, également un renforcement des capacités sur les méthodes d'estimation des FFI qui devraient être couplées avec des cas pratiques pour que nous soyons véritablement outillés pour les estimer. Et bien entendu, après ces estimations, cela pourrait amener à formuler des recommandations pour réduire autant que faire se peut l'évasion fiscale et tous les autres éléments qui viennent empêcher le Burkina Faso de mieux assainir ses finances publiques. Donc, je vous remercie. C'était Sommet Placide. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Placide. Merci beaucoup à l'équipe de Burkina. Vous pouvez maintenant cesser de nous partager votre écran parce que nous allons passer à la présentation suivante.
D'accord.
C'est une excellente présentation, brève, mais vraiment informative. Je suis très sûr que les participants ont noté des commentaires qu'ils vont donner après parce que nous allons devoir suivre les présentations à tour de rôle avant de passer à la session de questions et réponses. Alors, nous allons immédiatement passer à la présentation suivante, mais veuillez, s'il vous plaît, ne plus nous partager votre écran parce qu'il faut donner la place au présentateur suivant.
On a passé en pause, mais attends. Mais comment on a grandi ici? Dans ce qu'on va faire, on va mettre carrément quitter.
C'est juste. Voilà. So the next presentation will be from Ghana. Is there anyone from Ghana who can share the screen and then go ahead with the presentation?
Yes, we are available.
Maxwell, go ahead.
Maxwell, all right, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. I don't know if the noise in the background is from you, Maxwell.
In actual fact, I'm on the field doing our population census. So the district in which I am, we are along the border, so we have problem with network.
Okay.
The part that we have, the network, is closer to one of the schools.
I see.
So the noise will be like that. I've talked to the teachers anyway. So
okay.
Please
you can
kindly
go ahead
bear
with
with
the presentation.
me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to friends who are at the other side. Our presentation in Ghana. In Ghana, in 2014, we had some initiatives to measure or to study what actually goes on in terms of illicit financial flows, that the IFFs. And during that time, in 2014, the civil society organizations in the country have approached the then government to study the illicit financial flows in the country, because the issue is an issue where the government apparatus may also be part of certain things that we classify as illicit financial flows. So the then government in 2014 has given the International Social Development Center, or the ISODEC, to take the lead and to carry out the study on the illicit financial flows in Ghana. The government has also given the powers of the Ministry of Finance with its convening powers to convene meetings and to form committees to carry out the study in those days. The interministerial committees were set up then and chaired by the vice president of the country, who also chairs the economic management team during 2014. 4 technical committees were set up for collaboration and information sharing, including one on fiscal and consumption, which was to cater for IFFs. And we are also believing that with the current initiative on the IFFs, we can expand those committees to 6, where we will have some of the committees devoted to data and methods and reporting on the IFFs. Now, we also in Ghana, we realize that our data set that we can use to measure the illicit financial flows, we can get it from 12 main institutions, with 4 of them being the lead. The first institution if you can see the screen very well, the first institution that we have is the Ghana Statistical Service, which is taking the initiative now to coordinate the pilot. And there we can get the national accounts, that is the GDP of the country. We can get the population and housing census. Even the current one we are going to conduct, the result will come out very early for us to use. We also have supply and use table from the National Accounts Office, and that is the section in Ghana Statistical Service. And then we can have the income and price mechanism, trade statistics, and inflation also from the same institution. In a financial intelligence center, we can get the bank transaction data and the drug and human trafficking data. In Bank of Ghana, we can still get the bank transactions and get the balance of payment, the money supply, and list banks and other financial institutions and government revenue accounts, which are very essential for measuring the illicit financial flows. The economic organization crime, which is the IOCO we have, is an organization that carried out the emergency study of frauds and all those things. So we can get the fraud and economic crime, drug and human trafficking data from them. And on the Ghana Revenue Authority, we will get the taxable individuals, the taxable business and tax returns on individual, and tax returns on business and business turnover, profit, and number of employees in all the organizations that we want to study. In this, we can also look at the collaborations that we have, that I have already explained in the initial, that the collaboration was between the civil society organizations and ISODEC, or the Social Development Center, was tasked to actually carry out the coordination in 2014. Currently, Ghana Statistical Service is carrying out that coordination activity with all the institutions that we've listed. We have about 24 institutions, including Ghana Statistical Service, Ministry of Finance, the ISODEC, the Minerals Commission of Ghana, the Petroleum Commission of Ghana, and the Bank of Ghana, and the other institutions that we see as relevant in the financial sectors, mining sectors, and in the trade sectors are included, so that we can get those collaboration work and carry out our pilot studies effectively. Then in Ghana, we look at the relevant illicit financial flows that currently we can pinpoint that we may like to study during the pilot period. And we enumerate some of them as you can see on the slide. The first one is the mispricing of import and export trade. And we also see that one other relevant illicit financial flow in the country relates to cost escalation in extractive industries, that is the petroleum and the core mining industries, or the ore mining industries, which deals with gold, diamond, manganese, and bauxite. We also have recognized that foreign direct investment, inward, both inward and outward, is also one of the relevant illicit financial flows, in addition to those that we have already mentioned. Portfolio investment in terms of assets and liability is one. banking and finance activities that are not carried in the regulations as proposed by the Bank of Ghana is also part of the illicit financial flows activity that we expect or we have identified in Ghana as to study during the pilot period. The last two relates to taxing and digital economy or the e-commerce in the country. We have also realized that there are illicit financial flows in that particular sector of the economy. And the last that we have identified as relevant to Ghana is the estimating and the shadow economy in terms of its size that we are also trying to look at, because those shadow economies are very difficult to go in directly and measure even in our national accounts. So that is the one now we have identified as one of the illicit financial flows. So in all, we have identified 7 illicit financial flows that are relevant to Ghana as at now. So for us to study during the pilot period and to carry out. Now, the major industries in which we have those illicit financial flows activities, or those industries that are really affected by the illicit financial flows activities that we have identified as relevant to Ghana, are in trade sector, that is the import and exports. They are also in extractive industry, or what we refer to as the mining sector for the economy. In this, we have identified that the cost of production, the management fee, the sales or the price of crude oil and gas and the minerals are those areas in which the illicit financial flow activity takes place in the extractive industry. We also look at the banking, the investment, and finance sector as another sector which the illicit financial flow affects in terms of the real investment and portfolio investment.
Mr. Maxwell, sorry to interrupt. Could you please try to wrap up and
okay.
Because we still have many presenters. Just go to the most important point and conclude. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So for our expectation in the country, we believe that by this pilot study and all those things that we will do, we will have gained in-depth knowledge and skills and expertise in either reducing the illicit financial flows or eliminating those illicit financial flows. As at now, we also expect that we will have a training to carry out what we call the trade mispricing and study those areas so that we can try to reduce that. We also expect training also in base erosion and profit shifting by mapping Ghana illicit financial flow vulnerability. The last one, we will also look at the training in cost engineering and cost management of mining, petroleum activities, and core orbs. So those are the expectations we have for our training. So during the pilot period, so that we can have experts who can track down the illicit financial flow in Ghana. Now we have this table as the detailed portion of the training area we expect. So I need not present on it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maxwell. Thank you very much for your presentation. Could you please stop sharing the screen so that we may immediately pass to the next presenter?
Okay.
Je peux rappeler, s'il vous plaît, à tous les présentateurs d'essayer d'aller tout droit au but. On n'a pas besoin de tout dire. On peut focaliser sur les points les plus importants parce que nous avons aussi beaucoup d'autres présentateurs qui vont suivre. So the next is Gabon. Can we hear from Gabon?
Oui, oui, le Gabon. D'accord. Merci.
Madame.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Je crois qu'on va vous aider à... Voilà.
Théodora,
elle est là, la présentation.
Calaban, Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Théodora Aleka-Laban de la Commission nationale de lutte contre l'enrichissement illicite, qui est superviseur de cet atelier. Alors, notre présentation va porter sur 5 points. Le cadre juridique, institutionnel, les stratégies et acteurs de la lutte contre les FFI au Gabon, la collaboration existante entre les institutions, les flux financiers illicites d'origine commerciale soupçonnés, puisqu'il n'y a pas eu d'études approfondies dans ce sens, et bien sûr, à la fin, nos attentes. Alors, pour ce qui concerne le cadre institutionnel, légal et réglementaire, au Gabon, nous avons un ministère dédié à la bonne gouvernance qui s'occupe en partie de la corruption et donc du suivi ou de la lutte contre les FFI. Ensuite, on peut parler aussi de la Commission nationale de lutte contre l'enrichissement illicite, qui est une autorité administrative indépendante qui a été créée dès 2003. Et les tests régissant la Commission nationale de lutte contre la corruption et l'enrichissement illicite ont été révisés récemment. D'ailleurs, on avait retenu que l'enrichissement illicite, et lors de la révision récente des tests des lois que vous voyez sur votre écran, on a ajouté la corruption, englobant donc bien sûr les FFI. Aussi, comme autre acteur, autre organisme, on a l'Agence nationale d'investigation financière, qui est un organe en charge de la surveillance des flux financiers, et ce, en relation avec les établissements financiers. Et cet ANIF est régi par un règlement communautaire de la CEMAC. Dans notre pays, nous allons passer au deuxième slide.
Next slide,
Nous allons passer au deuxième slide. Voilà. Dans notre pays, le Gabon, nous avons des administrations régaliennes, et notamment la Direction générale des douanes et des droits indirects et la Direction générale des impôts, qui sont chargées de veiller à la régularité des flux financiers. Ces administrations ont mis en place des réformes visant à la dématérialisation des systèmes de paiement. Tout cela pour un suivi. En 2019, le système judiciaire a fait l'objet de réformes avec la création de tribunaux et de cours spécialisés dans la répression des infractions liées aux activités minières, forestières, halieutiques. Donc, pour ce qui concerne le cadre institutionnel, légal et réglementaire, je vais m'arrêter là. Les différents spécialistes dans ce domaine pourront toujours compléter nos propos. Pour ce qui est slide suivant, pour ce qui est de la stratégie, je passe au troisième slide. Est-ce qu'on peut voir le troisième slide, s'il vous plaît? Bon. Merci. Pour ce qui concerne la stratégie et les acteurs de lutte contre les FFI au Gabon, déjà en 2013, avec l'appui du PNUD, du Programme des Nations Unies pour le développement, le gouvernement gabonais a élaboré un document de stratégie de lutte contre la corruption et le blanchiment des capitaux. Ce document, qui cible 10 secteurs prioritaires susceptibles de faire l'objet de trafic illicite, ce document, cette stratégie donc, et ce document est mis en place ou suivi par l'ANIF et la Commission nationale de lutte contre la corruption et l'enrichissement illicite. Parmi les acteurs intervenant au Gabon dans la lutte contre les flux financiers illicites, nous pouvons donc, au regard de tout ce qui a été dit, citer l'Agence nationale d'investigation financière, la Direction nationale de la Banque des États de l'Afrique centrale, puisque nous avons parlé des règlements communautaires, donc la BEAC et son bras séculier qu'est la Commission bancaire de l'Afrique centrale, la COBAC, son organe de contrôle. Et pour terminer, pour ce qui concerne les acteurs, le groupe d'action contre le blanchiment d'argent en Afrique centrale, le GABAC, qui est une émanation du GAFI. Slide suivant. Slide suivant, s'il vous plaît. Alors, pour ce qui concerne les collaborations entre institutions, nous pouvons noter, faire état d'une collaboration entre la Commission nationale de lutte contre la corruption et l'enrichissement illicite, les forces de sécurité et le parquet de la République. De même, comme on en a déjà parlé, on peut parler de la NIF dans ses relations avec le secteur bancaire et le parquet de la République s'agissant des infractions en matière de blanchiment de capitaux, et plus précisément en matière de déclaration de soupçons. Il faut noter aussi que depuis le mois d'avril 2021, le ministère a lancé une étude diagnostique sur l'évaluation nationale de la gouvernance, la corruption et le risque des flux financiers illicites dans leur mise en œuvre dans le cadre des politiques publiques. Pour ce qui est de la détermination des flux financiers illicites d'origine commune, nous avons dit, donc à ce jour, pour ce qui concerne le Gabon, on ne peut parler que de soupçons. Alors, toutes origines confondues de flux, c'est-à-dire ce qui est retenu en termes d'exportation, importation, investissement vers le pays concerné, investissement vers l'extérieur ou les contrats publics. Et comme je le disais, sans études approfondies, on peut donc retenir 4 flux financiers illicites: la fraude fiscale, la violation des règles du marché, la corruption et le blanchiment des capitaux. Prochain slide, s'il vous plaît. Nous allons passer aux attentes que nous avons vis-à-vis de ce projet. Alors, comme attente vis-à-vis du projet pilote, nous attendons que des études soient menées pour approfondir et surtout pour l'estimation de ces 4 flux financiers précités, que sont la fraude fiscale, la violation des règles du marché, la corruption et le blanchiment des capitaux. Autre attente, c'est nous amener à contribuer, c'est de contribuer que les objectifs 16.4 et 16.5 des ODD, notamment la réduction des flux financiers illicites, le renforcement du recouvrement des avoirs, la lutte contre les formes de criminalité organisée, l'argent constitué, bien sûr, renforcer nos capacités, les capacités de tous les acteurs luttant contre les IFFs au Gabon, ces acteurs que nous avions spécifiés dans les slides précédents. Et tout cela en vue de la mise en place d'un mécanisme de mesure et de partage des données liées au FFI. Nous vous remercions.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Merci infiniment pour votre présentation. Veuillez cesser de... OK, très bien. Can we pass to the next presenter, who is Nigeria? May I remind the following presenters to try to really be brief, highlight the key messages and leave the details on the slide that we will share after the meeting. Someone from Nigeria, are you there? Nigeria. Hi, Anne, are you there?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you go ahead? Are you able to share your screen?
Yes, I can. But can you hear me?
Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Right.
But we have issues hearing you.
Okay, just give it a second.
We can't hear you. I think your connection is quite unstable. Your voice is not really very clear. Hello, Anne. Can you hear me? We can't hear you. I mean, we can only see the screen, but your voice is really, really not clear. So yeah, as you fix your connection, may I suggest that we move to the next presenter, who is Senegal? Then you will try to fix your connection. You will come after Senegal. Okay? Anne, are you there? Yes. On peut passer au Sénégal pendant que Anne fixe sa connexion. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un du Sénégal qui peut immédiatement passer et présenter?
Bonjour tout le monde.
Oui.
Bonjour, c'est Monsieur Abdoulaye Ndiaye.
Oui, c'est M. Abdoulaye Ndiaye de la Direction générale des impôts et des domaines. Donc, je vais présenter d'abord mes excuses pour la présentation que je n'ai pas mise à jour. Donc, il y avait un collègue de l'ANSD normalement qui devait présenter faire la présentation. C'est M. Diop, je crois. Voilà, donc je vais le laisser faire la présentation. Après, s'il y a des choses à ajouter sur l'aspect fiscal pour la compilation des méthodes de détection à partir des comptabilités ou des éléments inhabituels, on va revenir sur ça. Donc, je vais le laisser présenter le document.
OK.
Bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup pour cette introduction. Alors, comme il a indiqué tantôt, il y a l'équipe du Sénégal qui va un peu faire une présentation sur les flux financiers illicites. Cette présentation répond à 3 principales questions qui sont posées par les organisateurs. Mais à titre d'introduction, nous voulons un peu revenir sur certains éléments, notamment la complexité liée à la définition des FPI. Mais en résumé, nous pouvons retenir qu'il s'agit globalement des mouvements illégaux d'argent d'un pays à un autre. Et à cet effet, il implique généralement des pratiques dont on peut citer le blanchissement d'argent, les pots de vente réalisés par les organismes ou bien les entreprises internationales comme locales, l'évasion fiscale, la falsification et la corruption, entre autres. Alors, il est ressorti de l'étude menée par la CNUSED et qui est publiée dans son rapport sur le développement durable de l'Afrique que les flux financiers s'estiment à 88,6 milliards de dollars par an pour l'Afrique, ce qui représenterait à peu près la moitié qu'il faut pour bien sûr les l'ODD correspondants. Alors, et au Sénégal, les recherches que j'ai effectuées montrent un peu un rapport ou bien une déclaration du Forum civil qu'il estime à 166 milliards d'euros pour le cas spécifique du Sénégal. Il est ressort de ces études également que principalement ces flux proviennent des secteurs extractifs, dont 85% des ressources viennent de ce secteur-là. Donc, la suite de la présentation s'articule comme si, dans un premier temps, nous essaierons un peu de passer à revue quelques agences qui ont une expertise dans le domaine des FFI. Ensuite, une proposition, notamment des FFI les plus pertinents pour le Sénégal et les attentes concernant ce projet. Alors, ce sont les trois questions qui sont principalement adressées au pays, dont nous cherchons à apporter quelques éléments de réponse. Alors, il est important de préciser que principalement, la présentation va un peu synthétiser les questions qui ont été adressées via un questionnaire à l'ANSD, notamment pour le cas de ce projet pilote. Alors, à ce niveau, on va un peu parler de quelques agences. Alors, le choix est fait de mettre en avant ces trois et les autres, notamment la DGID et la douane, qui jouent un rôle très important dans ce cadre-là, pourront éventuellement à la fin apporter une contribution. La première agence, notamment l'Office national de la lutte contre la corruption, qui est un peu chargé d'essayer, dans la mesure du possible, de combattre la corruption au Sénégal, a développé une stratégie nationale de lutte contre la corruption 2020-2024 et une étude même sur la corruption dans le secteur extractif a été réalisée par la même institution. Il y a également la CENTIF, la cellule nationale de traitement des informations financières, qui un peu est chargée de veiller à toute l'information financière, notamment son traitement et lutte, ou bien est chargé un peu de lutter, de mettre en œuvre toutes les politiques qui sont liées au blanchissement des capitaux et au financement du terrorisme. C'est à cet effet qu'une loi est votée le 23 février 2008 qui est relative à la lutte contre le blanchiment des capitaux et le financement du terrorisme. Il y a également un décret qui est signé le 18 septembre 2019 qui porte création et fixation des règles d'organisation et de fonctionnement du Comité national de lutte contre le blanchissement. Une autre institution qui s'active également dans ce domaine, c'est l'initiative pour la transparence dans les industries extractives. Ça, je pense, c'est une initiative internationale dont l'ITI du Sénégal. Alors, dans son rapport de 2019, il y a une recommandation forte qui a été faite, qui est de finaliser le manuel de procédure sur la gestion des titres miniers, alors qui est en cours d'élaboration à la direction des mines et de la géologie, et de prévoir des contrôles systématiques sur les transactions opérées sur les titres miniers. Alors, comme je l'ai dit en guise d'introduction, le secteur de l'extractif occupe un poids important sur cette thématique, notamment les flux financiers illicites. Alors, nous pouvons également citer d'autres institutions qui sont chargées un peu de la mise en œuvre de la politique fiscale, que ce soit au niveau interne ou au niveau externe, notamment la DGID, avec le Code général des impôts qui essaye également, autant que possible, de pouvoir traquer ces flux financiers, notamment il y a les sous-déclarations entre autres, sont souvent réalisées. Il y a la douane également qui s'active un peu sur les transactions entre le pays et le reste du monde, notamment la fraude et autres types d'activités.
Est-ce qu'on peut essayer d'aller un peu plus vite, monsieur? Oui.
Alors, pour ce qui est des FFI les plus importantes, les plus pertinentes pour le Sénégal, nous avons cité trois. Les industries extractives qui, lors de l'enquête, on avait dit qu'ils bénéficient un peu de quelques avantages sur les premières années d'exploitation. Ils ont tendance à surexploiter. Pour ça, c'est juste à titre illustratif. Il y a le secteur minier, notamment les cimenteries, qui mobilisent des ressources assez importantes et qui souvent dont les ressources sont sous-évaluées afin de minimiser un peu certains types de montants à payer à l'administration. Il y a la sous-déclaration des entreprises dont des méthodes de traitement sont proposées. On peut pouvoir couvrir cela, mais ça engendre un peu des ressources qui sont un peu en fuite par rapport aux ressources qui sont mobilisées ou au recouvrement de l'État. Alors, quelles sont les attentes? Le premier aspect, c'est le renforcement de capacité sur les FFI, notamment la création sur les dépenses réalisées par l'industrie minière extractive. Il y a également un renforcement des capacités sur le blanchiment, l'évasion, la corruption et l'évaluation des dépenses qui pourraient être assimilées à des prélèvements sur les bénéfices des sociétés. Et le dernier porte sur le renforcement de la capacité des membres de l'équipe sur les méthodes statistiques à utiliser pour bien mesurer les effets. Donc voilà, ça met un peu fin à la présentation qui tentait de répondre aux trois questions posées. Sur ce, avec votre autorisation, monsieur le modérateur, nous pouvons passer la parole éventuellement aux autres participants du Sénégal à cet atelier. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, mais on va plutôt passer la parole au présentateur suivant, un autre pays. Nous allons revenir dans le débat, c'est là où on va essayer d'accorder des paroles à vos collègues plus tard. Merci. Nigeria. Are you able now to speak clearly? Is the connection fixed? Anne, we can't hear you. Go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me now?
Not so much clear, but let's try. Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead. Can you share a screen and do your very quick presentation, please?
Yes, I can. If you can hear me, that's sorry for the hiccup. All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Anne Ryan, and I'm president from National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria. So sorry for the change. But then, if you can hear me, I would like to respond to the document. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, okay. So for Nigeria, we have an agency committee, and this committee comprises of about 15 partners and agencies, amongst which I have listed some of them here: National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDSA, then the Nigerian Customs Service, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFFs, then the Independent Corrupt Practices Order-Related Offenses Commission. So in the interagency committee, the ICPC serves as the secretariat. I believe some of the MPAs are on this call right now. So next, talking about the initiatives that Nigeria has taken to try and address the issue of international flows. We have the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, which Nigeria was one of the African countries to join, and then was established with the National Assembly in 2007. This initiative has been very effective in public space and so on, as well as we have a proposed petroleum industry bill that seeks to unbundle the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, and this makes the oil and gas sector more transparent. Yes, and again in 2007 we had the Mining Act that has helped to legislate and regulate the mining sector. The report has said in the agency committee. We have this committee in Nigeria and it's chaired by Dr. Adeyemi, who is the special advisor to the president on economic matters. This committee was inaugurated in May 2019, and different stakeholders, key stakeholders were part of this the agency committee has carried out several sensitization and awareness campaigns.
Madam Anne, may I interrupt you? Yes. Your voice is really, we can't hear, and interpreters cannot really work on that. We are unable really to hear what you're saying. Maybe we could, sorry?
I'll give one of my colleagues.
Godwin, can you speak clearly? No, I think your connection isn't too good. We can't hear you either. Yeah, so let's pause from here and go for South Africa. Then we will get back to you after I consult my bosses on how to deal with this. Okay. Sorry about that. It's an issue of internet. We can't really hear your voices. Is there someone from South Africa who can be given the floor?
Good day, Douglas. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
That's great. Colleagues, if you can also confirm that you can see the slide on screen.
Yes, I see the slides.
That's okay. Colleagues, my name is Mike Masiapato. I actually am deployed within the Financial Intelligence Unit in South Africa, FIC, and I had been mandated to make this short presentation in terms of our effort as a jurisdiction in terms of dealing with the issues of illicit financial flows. Maybe the first thing to respond to colleagues is around the issue of the structural provision, as well as the mechanism that we've put together for the purposes of addressing issues of illicit financial flows and understanding the sketch, as it were. So in our case, we have a structure, as you can see it on screen, with the apex structure being the Interdepartmental Working Group on Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism. And of course, the Illicit Financial Flows Working Group has been established to submit under that Interdepartmental Working Group. As you can see on the left, it does show the critical stakeholders within our jurisdiction that are effectively dealing with this issue of illicit financial flows. You will see there that we have the police, we have the Reserve Bank, we have the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, we have our revenue services. We also have our special investigating unit together with the financial intelligence unit that are effectively being mandated to address the issues of illicit financial flows. But of course, we also have our colleagues from the Statistical Office who are also in a way taking part in as far as the issues of statistical provision is concerned. So we had to ultimately have this kind of a mechanism on the table after we had gone into our parliamentary environment to make presentations in terms of the work that we do on illicit financial flows. But the parliamentarians realized that our work was fairly scattered and various structures were addressing the issues of illicit financial flows in highly fragmented manner. And it was on that basis that we were actually instructed to coordinate our efforts and make sure that we have a single coordinated agency or structure that is actually coordinating this particular work. I do hope, colleagues, that the interpreters will be able to follow me through. I'm trying to kind of slow down as I present. So obviously, as some of the colleagues had also indicated, in our jurisdiction, we had also had to have a definition of what is illicit financial flows. And to that extent, you can see the definition there. The key underlying aspect is about cross-jurisdictional, the movement of those funds from our side to the other jurisdiction or from other to our side. But of course, looking at two brackets, illegally earned money as well as legally earned, the one that is actually being transmitted out of the country outside the legislative framework. So we have also created a mechanism for the purposes of dealing with the issues as it were. And you can see the mechanism at the bottom end, but that is about the issues of investigations in terms of us dealing with the issues as it were. The other issue that we just wanted to kind of reflect in this particular presentation, colleagues, was to also reflect on some of the successes that we had managed to realize as the interagency working group. You will realize there that we managed to put back in excess of 400 million back into the fiscus, that is in rents, on the basis of the, the monies that has been, legally earned and obviously being part of the IFF as it were. And the rest of the other elements there demonstrate some of the activities that we do as the various stakeholders in dealing with this particular sketch. If you look at the next bracket, we are basically just reflecting there in terms of the approach that we are actually using in addressing this particular issue. We have actually admitted that you cannot deal with illicit financial flows from a single agency point of view. It can only be through a multi-agency mechanism that you need to deploy for the purposes of being effectively able to calculate the sketch, as it were, as well as being able effectively to counter, its existence in the entire value chain. That is why in one of the bullets there, we are talking about another interagency working group that has been established within our revenue services that is looking at the trades and the various areas that are being exploited and generating these illicit financial flows. And they continue to do the work in that space, but we are able to complement their work from the investigations point of view. If we look at the next slide, we are trying to respond to the question around in which areas are we finding or this particular sketch arising from. Despite the rest of the other issues that are being described on the slide, what is important is what is in the extreme right. We are indicating there that as a jurisdiction ourselves, we are saying that 60% of illicit financial flows in South Africa is mainly generated through as a proceeds of commercial tax evasion, 60% of that. 35% of it is mainly proceeds from criminal activities, mainly drug trade and the like, and only 5% we have identified it to be arising from, from corruption as it were. In this particular slide, we are just indicating, as I move towards conclusion, that one of the biggest areas in our case is the issues of bulk cash smuggling, which we have found to be one of the greatest contributors in as far as illicit financial flows is concerned. And this particular aspect here, as you can see, we are actually able to indicate that there has been a lot of people that has been arrested in our ports of entry, particularly airports, who had been trying to exit bulk cash out of our jurisdiction into other countries. And that, for us, is one of the biggest issues that we have to be looking at. But of course, arising from this, one of the issues that we are reflecting here is about what are the key drivers. Mainly is the fact that sanctioning of people that are found to have subverted this particular activity had mainly been getting out, very almost scot-free. And that on its own has been creating some kind of lucrative activity where people continue to do the sketch and they know that they can be able to get out of it. And of course, the other issue is just weak controls in our border environment, which continues to generate the whole issue. And of course, socioeconomic conditions continues to be one of those issues as it were. Lastly, in terms of our broader reflection on the issue, We do behind this particular initiative, led by our colleague Mukongo, in terms of making sure that we are able to count, these issues of illicit financial flows, so that we can be able to know how big it is and ultimately be able to make sure that we contribute in eliminating the scourge and obviously protecting our economies going forward. So this is effectively, in short, I will say, the presentation from South Africa, and the fact that we are fully behind this particular initiative, and we shall indeed continue to take part in this activity. Thank you very much, Douglas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mike. Very, very informative and straight to the point presentation. Thank you very much. Could we, could I call again upon Anne from Nigeria to see whether there is any possibility improving on the voice?
Hello, Douglas. Hello, Douglas. Can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you. That's
Loud
Moses, or?
No, it's Anne using Moses' system.
Very good.
Right.
You have a so nice voice, so I'm sorry.
Sorry about the mix-up.
Go ahead,
All
Anne.
right. Thank you so much. I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Apologies once more. My name is Anne Ibrahim, and I'm making the presentation on behalf of Nigeria. I work with National Bureau of Statistics. And straight to the point, I just want to mention here that we have an interagency committee on illicit financial flows in Nigeria. And this interagency committee comprises of 15 MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, amongst which I have just listed just a few, just 4 of them here: the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the Nigerian Customs Service, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, then the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offenses Commission. This ICPC, they are the secretariat for the Interagency Committee in Nigeria. Other agencies are also on this call, like the people from Ministry of Budget and National Planning, Federal Inland Revenue, CBN, and other MDAs. So straight on to what initiatives Nigeria has taken, or the plans that we've taken to address the issue of illicit financial flows. We have the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. I just want to mention here that Nigeria was one of the first countries in Africa to join the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the EITI, in 2003. And in 2007, the National Assembly established the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. It's now an agency. And this initiative has been quite productive and effective in strengthening the public debate and also promoting, policy options with regard to signing of bonuses, unpaid royalties, theft of crude oil, and refined products. Another initiative was we have a proposed petroleum industry bill, and this bill is majorly to address the issue of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and to make the oil and gas sector more transparent. In 2007, we have passed the Mining Act, majorly to regulate the mining sector. So the Interagency Committee, which I had earlier mentioned, has done a lot of different activities and programs to sensitize Nigerians and raise awareness on the ills of these illicit financial flows. This interagency committee is chaired by Dr. Adeyemi, who is the special advisor to the president on economic matters. The interagency committee was inaugurated in May 2019 and has carried out several activities like capacity building programs on understanding these illicit financial flows, and this was conducted in October 2020. They also went ahead to engage two consultants to study the illicit financial flows in the oil and gas sector, as well as the tax administration. After the consultants submitted their report. There was a workshop to review these reports by key stakeholders in March 2021. Then went on to do a capacity building program for all investigators. This was done in April 2021. Then in May 2021, there was an international conference on illicit financial flow and asset recovery, and this was organized in collaboration with the Coalition of Dialogue on Africa, CODA, and African Union Advisory Board on Corruption. There's also a capacity building program that for negotiators that's been proposed and it's been organized. It's going to hold in the next 2 weeks, June 28th to 29th of this year. Another initiative of the government of Nigeria is the tax reforms and financial transparency. It might interest you to know that Nigeria has signed international treaties and agreements to tackle international tax avoidance and evasion. The Financial Act of 2020 has been replaced. The Financial Act of 1999 has been replaced with a more current one, an Act of 2020. There's also a voluntary asset and income declaration scheme. We have also the bank verification number scheme, which links an individual's account, no matter the number of accounts you have, it links it together. You know, we have also improved interagency relationship between the regulators, the interagency committee, then also the signing of bilateral agreements with different countries like Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, USA, on the return of stolen assets. Another initiative is the Whistleblower Program. This program was developed and organized by Ministry of Finance. And this the main agenda, the objective of this Whistleblower Program was to address and encourage citizens to voluntarily disclose any information they have to the government about any fraud, bribery, and any financial misconduct in any form about corruption and theft. And in return of this information, the government would give 2.5 or 5.0% of the amount when it's recovered to the individual. So the next issue is what are the most recent illicit financial flows that we have that are relevant in Nigeria? First is the production and trade of goods and services. Under this particular, illicit financial flow, we have the issue of the illegal arms trade and terror financing, smuggling of agricultural and mineral products, as well as oil racketeering, and also counterfeits of goods in Nigeria. Secondly, the issue of bribery and corruption. We have an issue of mispricing, tax evasion, and then misuse of public and private position for direct or indirect personal gain, money laundering and all of that. So these are some of the flows, the illicit financial flows that are more and activities and commodities that are mostly affected. We have the extractive industry, that's the illegal oil and solid minerals mining. Then the agricultural sector, talking about smuggling and cross-border trading, foreign trade, domestic wholesale and retail trade sector, then public administration, the issue of security and its defense, then telecommunications as well, in the digital sector, then the financial sector, and as well as real estate. So these are the expectations we have at the workshop, for this particular workshop, that we will learn from other countries how to tackle these challenges from the source. We think that's very expedient. Then we will want to discussions across, the different countries, whatever it's brought up about the challenges and analysis of best practices to tackle these issues that we have. Thank you so much for your attention. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Anne, and thank God it managed. That was a very, very good presentation indeed.
Thank you.
So I think we've covered all the countries. We will now open the floor. We have 15 minutes left for questions and answers, questions from participants, and then different presenters would be asked to react to different relevant questions. So I think I will open the floor. If you have a question, raise your hand, then we will go giving you the floor, and then we just need to be really straight to the point. We have 15 minutes to go, so we need to cover all the most important questions that the audience might have on the previous presentation. So I think I've seen a hand up from Nilton from the beginning of the presentation. Nilton, do you have a question or a comment?
Muito boa tarde. Primeiro, felicitar os apresentadores. A pergunta é simples. O nosso compatriota do Ghana, quando fez a apresentação, houve um momento em que disse o seguinte, que existem no Instituto de Estatística do Ghana alguns indicadores sobre fluxos financeiros ilícitos que eles compilam. Eu queria saber quais são esses indicadores. Obrigado. Não sei se foi audível. Conseguiram ouvir-me?
So, you mean the names of what?
Não, o senhor do Ghana apresentou um quadro em que mostrava as instituições que compilam indicadores dos fluxos financeiros ilícitos. E uma das instituições era o Instituto Nacional de Estatística do Ghana. Então, gostava de saber quais são esses indicadores compilados ao nível do Instituto Nacional de Estatística. Quais são as variáveis que eles usam?
Good. Understood. Can we give the floor to Eliman? I see a hands up from Elimane.
Merci beaucoup, Douglas. J'ai des questions directes pour le Burkina Faso. Ils n'ont pas cité dans leur présentation l'ITIE. Est-ce qu'au Burkina, l'initiative ITIE n'est pas une source d'information pour renseigner donc les flux financiers illicites? Également, vous avez cité des organisations civiles comme le RENLAC. Et la question que je voulais poser, c'est justement comment les organisations de la société civile peuvent vraiment contribuer à ce projet-là à côté des institutions administratives et multilatérales. Et l'autre question, c'est sur le Sénégal. En citant les pays, les secteurs prioritaires, j'ai vu le secteur minier, c'est vrai et tout, mais je n'ai pas vu le secteur des télécommunications. Est-ce à dire que vous pensez que c'est un secteur négligeable ou bien il y a vraiment un travail à faire parce qu'on sait que les flux financiers après le secteur minier, c'est surtout le télécom également qui sont concernés. Et également, le Sénégal fait partie des rares pays qui interviennent dans l'initiative BEPS. Vous n'en avez pas parlé, mais est-ce que vous pensez que le fait de participer à cette initiative BEPS de l'OCDE peut également donner des opportunités d'accès à des données et faciliter la mise en œuvre de ce projet au Sénégal? Merci beaucoup.
Merci, M. Elimane. Le floor est passé à M. Alex. Alex, the floor is yours. Alex, I see your hands up. Alex, you have the floor, Alex.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, please.
Good afternoon.
Alex, I'm speaking from Ghana. Yesterday, during question time, many people raised issues and suggestions that could help to make the illicit financial flow effective in Africa. But I think in the policies, they should also bring in punishment. So those who flout over the laws should be punished to deter others from doing that. I think when we put punishment in the legislation, it will be more effective to deter others from doing that activity. Thank you.
Okay, I think we still have only 10 minutes. Let's first hear from the presenters, the reaction on the questions before we see whether we still have any other time for further questions. So I think we will start by a question asked by Nilton to Ghana.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I presented in my presentation is where we can get the source of data for compiling the illicit financial flow. It is not that we are measuring the illicit financial flow, but the source of data from the statistical unit or Ghana Statistical Service for the compilation of the illicit financial flow. And I mentioned national account, which is the GDP, the population and housing census data, the supply and use table that we have recently compiled, and then the income and pricing mechanism from the trade statistical unit of our economic statistics division, and then inflation from the price section of the economic statistics division of Ghana Statistical Service. So I'm not mentioning that we have measured the illicit financial flow, but those are some of the data sources that we can get from Ghana Statistical Service. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we pass to the next question? La question a été posée par Monsieur Limane, représentateur du Sénégal.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai noté deux questions posées, je pense, par Eliman. La première, c'est la contribution, notamment les secteurs prioritaires. Alors, ce qu'il faut noter en préparant la présentation, il nous a été demandé de citer 3 secteurs prioritaires. Donc, également, d'après les recherches, c'est le secteur extractif du domaine, d'où le choix un peu de parler de l'extractif et du secteur minier. Cela ne veut pas dire que les télécoms ne sont pas importants, c'est juste qu'on ne l'a pas cité parce qu'on a cité 3. Donc ça, je pense que c'est quelque chose qui sera peut-être abordé dans les travaux proprement dits pour couvrir un peu tous les secteurs qui sont un peu touchés par les flux financiers illicites. Alors l'initiative DEP, sûrement ça pourra faciliter. Donc sur cette question, je pense que je n'ai pas une très bonne connaissance de cette initiative. Alors, si peut-être quelqu'un d'autre de l'équipe du Sénégal a des éléments des réponses appropriées à lui apporter, peut-être le modérateur pourra lui passer la parole. Merci.
Merci. Il y avait aussi une question de M. Rimane qui était adressée au Burkina Faso sur le rôle des organisations de société civile. Burkina Faso, vous pouvez réagir?
Oui. Oui. Pour la question relative au RENLAC, qui est le réseau national de lutte contre la corruption, il faut dire que c'est une association, donc relevant de la société civile, qui mène des activités de recherche ou de recherche-action pour cibler les principaux secteurs dans lesquels il y a des risques ou bien il y a de la corruption avérée. Et une fois que c'est fait, ils n'ont pas un autre pouvoir, mais c'est une matière qui est là disponible, qui peut mettre en branle le système judiciaire pour mener des investigations en bonne et due forme. Donc, on estime que c'est un acteur important dans non seulement en termes de sensibilisation, mais en termes d'information pour que les procédures judiciaires éventuellement se mettent en branle. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Je vais, dans l'intérêt du temps qui nous reste, je vais permettre aux deux dernières intervenants de poser leurs questions. Monsieur Richard Kofi et Monsieur Lamek Odada. Richard Kofi, do you have a question? I see your hands up.
Hello. Good day to all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. I have some quick questions to ask. Is there currently any globally accepted, methodology which can be, employed in the monitoring of the IFFs by countries, or is it the contemplation of this particular pilot program to come up with such a methodology? Secondly, if you talk of the IFFs, I do hope that the issues will cover from the licensing stage through the entire value chain up to the decommissioning of all the extractive, industry. So, IFFs can occur at any point in time from the licensing stage to the decommissioning of a mine or of an oil field. Is that the contemplation that will be covered whenever we are going to monitor these IFFs? And the last question goes to Ghana specifically. In the presentation, the focus has been mainly on the extractives, that is the non-renewables. I didn't hear anything about the renewables, such as forestry and fisheries. Why were those left out in the Ghana presentation? I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi, for your question. I think we will get reaction from respective people. Lamek Odada.
Thank you, and good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Mine is just an observation, and maybe when working around this, it would help us to move faster and quickly. The observation here is that measuring of these IFFs is a big plus to the government. And surely we need to get the government authorities like the Ministry of Finance, people who are in charge of tax collection and all that in from the beginning. Because at a later stage, when we will be trying to collect data, somebody will start asking you, but where is this story coming from? So my suggestion would have been, even though now it's too late, is that we need to rope these people in from the beginning so that the story is somehow kind of being spread out before this real exercise starts. The next question I wanted to ask is not to any specific presenter, is that if we have a universal or an agreed methodology, are we assuming that this methodology will then be a one-size-fits-all for all countries? If not, then what will happen when that methodology cannot be applied to country X or country Y? Are we going to be given a chance to modify that methodology? So those are my two submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard and Lamek. I think you've raised a very important question about especially the methodology and the applicability of the methodology across different contexts. I assume this question will be discussed in the next session, but I'll call upon maybe Madame Anu to react to this question before we can we can move towards the conclusion.
Thank you very much, Douglas, and greetings from the sunny Finland, sunny and cool. Yes, I think these are really crucial points that have been raised in the discussion, and many countries have already thought about the need, for instance, to engage all the central stakeholders in the work, because IFF is definitely an issue where data are held by many different authorities, and the IFFs can leave marks in data sets held by the tax authorities or the customs authorities or the law enforcement and so on. The idea really in the pilots is to involve all the key stakeholders in the country and form a technical working group involving those stakeholders. Therefore, one of the first steps will be to do a mapping of national agencies who have a mandate, knowledge, or data that might be relevant for the measurement of IFFs. And this technical working group would then oversee and guide the pilot activities and be able to follow up on progress and agree on working methods across the agencies. I think that will be very crucial for any progress in this area. On the selection of methods, yes, we will have a suite of methods, which Boyan will present shortly. And we have at least 2 methods for each type of tax and commercial IFF, so that the country can choose the method that fits the national context best. Of course, we make proposals on how the method could be applied, and in reality, it may have to be adjusted so that it fits the current data that's available in the country. All the feedback on the changes needed will be crucial for refining the guidance that we have on the methodology. So we realize that one method will not fit every country. Definitely there will have to be country implementation. Although we aim at international comparability, at the same time, we realize that we start in a stepwise way, attempting to measure the most important IFFs where there's data and where we can find a method that works. If there are new developments, this is an area where new things happen very quickly, and we have also included one method that has only been recently used. New data sets are coming, also global data sets. So we may have to refine several times before we are ready to propose global guidance. Therefore, the pilots will be important. I hope I answered the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anu. I think this is a very, very good and relevant end to the session, because actually it introduces the next session. We will be discussing exactly the methodology, the tools which are out there, and how best actually these tools could be adjusted and to align with a specific context. So it raises a very interesting question and a good way of landing to the next session. So I think we've reached the maximum time allocated for this session. We will now break for 10-12 minutes. We will come back at 3:30 in the next 17 minutes for break. We will come back, and this next session will actually go deeper into the questions around the methodology. So nous avons atteint la fin de notre session. Elle nous introduit très bien sur les thèmes de la session qui va suivre, surtout en rapport avec la méthodologie et les instruments qui sont là pour des possibles ajustements pour tenir compte du contexte des différents pays. Nous allons prendre une pause d'à peu près 15 minutes. On va recommencer dans les 15 minutes qui vont suivre à 15h30 à 17h. Je ne sais pas, ça sera quelle heure à votre... Oh my gosh. Yeah. 15 minutes? No, 10 minutes from now, sorry. Yeah, 10 minutes from now, 10 minutes de pause et on revient tous. Merci à tous, merci à tous les intervenants et merci à toute l'audience. À plus. See you next 10 minutes.
So you see that these results you are taking to function. Go to the ministry. Okay. No, I think as long as my statistics will appear, it's fine. On the packet data, yeah. How do I need to breathe in? Do I need to hold?
We will figure it out. We will find out. Not that bad. Okay?
Ah, it's not so good. Yeah, it's okay.
Really? Want to bring? Hey, bring me quick here. Sorry. You know what you can do? Oh? I'm having chills. I'm having chills.
No chills. I'm just shaking. No chills.
Right. No, like when you are holding something.
So it's 1:45. I'm going to wait one more minute and then I think we can actually start the session. Great. So the last section for today really is to try and wrap up and provide a little bit of guidance on the types of methodologies that we have currently available. It's important to note that when we think about illicit financial flows, the methodological or statistical guideline looks at 4 particular categories of illicit financial flows. And the most important one that we focus on the continent specifically is on tax and commercial IFFs, but we've also got corruption, we've got theft type and terrorist illicit financial flows, and we've obviously got illegal markets. Our partners in this process, obviously the UNODC together with UNCTAD, are focusing on the theft type and illegal market activities in Latin America. But you will recall that you've been asked to populate a questionnaire and to identify which of the 4 types of IFFs are relevant for you, so that we can also identify which methodologies we'd like to test in your countries. Now, we've had some very rich discussions, we've had amazing presentations, and there's a lot of work that's being done in the space, so it's been very exciting to see. But something that was raised yesterday was around the type of legal framework that you have in place and how you start to unlock illicit financial flows. And we've had some questions around what it means, do we have a holistic methodology, etc. It's important to remember that these particular pilots that we're focusing on really focus on the statistical measurement and trying to actually identify what the extent of illicit financial flows are in your country, looking at the different types. What then happens is once you have a sense of what the measurement is, it becomes very easy to put steps and measures in place on how to actually tackle it. But this isn't the process in which we're going to come up with a strategy. It'll certainly inform it, and there's a lot of work that's being done on the continent to try and address IFFs in a much more holistic way. So we're going to start off with just looking at some of the methodologies that as countries you'll be required to start exploring, what it implies from a variable perspective, what some of the methodologies are saying and what the requirements are from you. So I'm going to hand over to Boyan, who's going to present the UNCTAD approach to tax and commercial IFFs, and then we'll actually hand over to the UNODC, where we will have Diana and Irmgard presenting on some of the work that they've done on drugs and trafficking. So Boyan, over to you, if you can start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you clearly. I see your presentation is coming through. Great, we can see it as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think I should do something like this. So yeah, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm very happy that we have this chance to talk and work together on this very interesting topic of the illicit financial flows. So as Kathy has mentioned, I will take up some of your time to look into methodological guidelines for the statistical measurement of tax and commercial illicit financial flows. So the guidelines are important because they will guide countries with the pilot testing of the statistical measurement of the IFFs, specifically with 3 things or 3 items. So the first one is to define the concept of tax and commercial IFFs. So this is something that Steve has briefly presented yesterday. Then the second point, which is actually central to my presentation today, is to suggest methodologies to measure tax and commercial IFFs. And then the third main contribution of the methodological guidelines is we believe it provides practical guidance to statistical authorities to really undertake this exercise of the measurement of the illicit financial flows. So in the presentation today, we will look into these suggested methodologies to measure the tax and commercial IFFs. Now, at the onset, we know that there are various methods to measure the IFFs, and they have been proposed and tested in literature and applied in various research. Now, even though all these methods try to measure or estimate the size of the illicit financial flows, there is a marked difference between the research or econometric approaches and the statistical approach on the other hand. Now, the statistical approach is something that we are most interested in today or in this, the whole process. Now, statistical approaches tend to rely more on the so-called bottom-up or direct measurement of the IFFs, which of course may be more important for reliability or even political buy-in or a general explainability, so to say. Now, also what is important is that typically statistical authorities, so those are the authorities or agencies within the national statistical system, would normally have access to a more detailed or more granular data for analysis than, let's say, external researchers. It is also important that the IFF methodology, so methodologies to measure the illicit financial flows, can be aligned and integrated with the existing statistical frameworks, such as the system of national accounts or the balance of payments. Now, although statistical systems or even tax systems or administrative systems will vary from country to country, it is important, as what Anu has said in a concluding remarks on the previous session, that countries, and as far as possible, can apply comparable methodologies that is comprehensive and also fully consistent or aligned with the conceptual framework that was presented yesterday. For those purposes, in the guidelines, we have tried to set up a certain set of criteria to guide and support the selection of methodologies. Now, these criteria are grouped into those three categories. So first, we have the soundness of the methods, such as clarity of the concept or transferability or even capacity requirements. The second set of criteria looks at the source data, so availability, coverage, granularity, and so on. And then last, but definitely not least, is the quality of results. So we refer to the relevance for use, the clarity, coherence, to list just a few criteria in that regard. The guidelines link activities that generate tax and commercial IFFs to measurement methodologies. Now, in the conceptual part of the guidelines, this is discussed in more details, but here we depict the three major groups of the IFF flows or activities. So, namely, we have the trade misinvoicing, then we have the profit shifting, specifically profit shifting by multinational enterprises, and then we have the flows of undeclared offshore wealth and related tax evasion by individuals. As you can see, we have identified two alternative methods for each of those three types of the tax and commercial IFFs. As was already mentioned earlier, we propose to have a pair of methods for each of the type of the IFFs. So two different methods in terms of data requirements, but also capacity requirements, specifically to account for varying national circumstances and statistical capacities. Now, in the next few minutes, we will go briefly through those six methods to get the main idea or the main gist of what we are talking about. Now, the first couple of methods, so dealing with the trade misinvoicing, so we have number one, so method number one, which is called the partner country method. Well, we added a little plus there because it is enhanced a little bit, which we outline in the guidelines. And the second method, method number two, is the price filter method. Now, partner country method, I'm sure most of you are aware of the method. So it reviews the bilateral discrepancies in reported trade flows. So what country A reports as its imports from country B is being cross-checked against what country B is exporting into country A. Now, obvious strength of this method is that the partner country data could also be available at the global level, for instance, from the UN Comtrade database. However, there are several challenges with this method. Of course, the main one is that there are many reasons for trade asymmetries, not only the IFFs, such as we have different times of recording, different zones that are included, valuation things, and so on. In the guidelines, we propose ways to mitigate these limitations. So essentially to drill down and to look at each of the discrepancies or these asymmetries and filter those out and see what is left there that could be attributed to the misinvoicing, so as a measure of the IFFs. The price filter method, on the other hand, builds on identifying abnormally priced transactions in international trade. So it first designs the range, so the price filter, which says the prices that fall into this range are okay. Any prices that fall outside of this price filter, so either higher or lower, are marked as abnormally priced transactions, therefore leading to the IFFs. A very good thing with the price filter method is that, of course, it relies on a granular microdata, transaction-based microdata, and it does not rely on the partner's transaction data. However, it only looks at the mispricing. It can sometimes be unable to identify legitimate unusual prices, like if you have lower prices offered by long-term contracts and so on. Profit shifting can use several channels or means or flows, such as the transfer mispricing, strategic location of debt or assets, and so on. Now, even though there have been numerous methods tested already for measuring the profit shifting, in the guidelines we have decided to go for two methods. So method number 3 looks at the global distribution of profits within an M&E. Essentially, it looks at how the units within a multinational enterprise shift profits among themselves, responding to tax incentives. So there is an assumption that if there is a deviation from predicted profitability, this is a sign of profit shifting. And usually this means that if the tax rates, so the effective tax rates that the companies are facing are lower, then this would mean that the profits would be shifted into this country and vice versa. Although this method has a, let's say, relatively straightforward concept and is ideally also used at the microdata level. So the country by country reporting microdata sets are becoming available in some countries or in some cases. Of course, there are some limitations that this econometric-based method requires several assumptions to be made, which of course leads to underestimation and or maybe even sometimes oversimplification of reality. So some additional checks may be needed or supplemented with the interpretation tools that are available in the national statistical system. Method number 4 compares multinational companies to a comparable non-M&Es or domestic companies, and essentially identifies potentially tax avoiding behaviors, and from that to determine the amount of the profit that was shifted as a measure of the IFFs. Obvious strength of this method lies in that the method is based on business statistics data that are available to statistical authorities in many countries. On the other hand, of course, several assumptions have to be made, and the method does involve many detailed analysis phases. So it may be a little bit tricky to implement, specifically in small economies where the number of businesses is lower. So, to look for the control group. So there may be some challenges in the statistical measurement there. flows of undeclared offshore wealth or related tax evasion by individuals, here we suggest two methods. Method number 5, the undeclared offshore asset, and method number 6, offshore financial wealth. Now, method number 5 looks at the, as the name says, at the undeclared offshore asset. So essentially it compares what has been declared by citizens of country A and what internationally recorded data say about the assets held abroad by citizens of country A, and then compares those things. Now, method number 6 starts from a global level imbalance of international portfolio liabilities and assets, therefore identifies the global offshore financial wealth, which is then in process broken down by country of ownership and by international financial center, and finally, assuming the non-compliance rate on offshore wealth, it is being transformed into the level of illicit financial flows. Now, both of these methods, even though they start at the, let's say, at the broader level and then slowly dig down, so they have a relatively straightforward concept. However, they suffer from data unavailability, which means that several assumptions have to be made. And also, both of those methods have to make the transformation of a stock measure to a flow measure. If you remember, Enrico yesterday specifically marked that we are talking about the flows. So there has to be a transformation in these two cases from stock to a flow measure. So for those reasons, this pair of methods may require additional caution when or if being applied. Now, we do not foresee the use of all these methods simultaneously, so the selection of methods would depend on the country context because of differences in nationally relevant type of IFFs, of data availability, or even the statistical capacity. So what we would like to stress here is that there is flexibility for countries to choose the method or methods and measure the IFF types that are most relevant for your own country. Now, given the nature of the IFFs, or also, as we have seen from one of the questions yesterday, given the sensitivity with the SDG indicator 16.1, the aim with this pilot testing and with the guidelines is to support a nationally owned process of statistical measurement of the IFFs. So the pilots using the guidelines are intended to empower national authorities, specifically national statistical authorities, to do their own estimation of the IFFs, of course, reflecting national needs. Now, the guidelines also include certain set of tools to support those national activities, so such as the list of global data sources or list of studies. There was a self-assessment questionnaire, methods, fact sheets, checklist, and so on. More will be said in due course as we move along. At this time, I think I will have to finish. So I will just say that I'm very excited and we're very keen on learning the real life experience and receiving the feedback to further refine the guidelines. So eventually, as Anu has said, stepwise to achieve the methods that would support a comparable and comprehensive measure of the illicit financial flows. So
thank you very much.
Yes.
Sorry, thanks, Boyan. Thank you very much for keeping it short and actually very clear and concise. I appreciate it. Deanna, are we handing over to you first?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Very clearly.
I'm trying to upload my presentation. 1 second. Yes.
Great.
Can you see?
We can see it. Yes, thank you.
I think if you can all hear me well, I will start. Okay, thank you.
Can you just put it into slideshow mode, please?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Into slideshow.
Can you see it into slideshow now? Because I can see into slideshow.
Okay, it doesn't on mine, but just go ahead, Diana. Let's not waste time. Thank you.
Okay, let me know if the slides are in progress, so in case.
Okay, great.
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you. I will give a quick presentation and somehow explain the context of estimating illicit financial flows related to drug trafficking activities. The work started with UNODC in 2017 together with UNCTAD, but it builds up on the previous work UNODC conducted on analyzing the drug markets and also trying to estimate the value generated by such markets in the various countries all over the world. More recently, we tried to bring into this type of work also the concepts of illicit financial flows, building in from the concepts that were presented yesterday by Steve and Enrico and the definition that was given for statistical purposes of illicit financial flows. This particular presentation will focus on income generation illicit financial flows. I'm not sure everyone remembers what is the difference between income generation and income management. Basically, income generation illicit financial flows. An example applied to drugs is, for example, relates to transactions that are aimed at paying illicit drugs exported to another country. This is an example. So we are talking about those type of transactions that are strictly related to the purchase of sale of drugs or drug trafficking service across the borders. Traditionally, when we talk about drug markets and the economic value, we talk about the income generated by drug trafficking activities. These drug trafficking activities in the context of the system of national accounts and balance of payments, so talking about the context of that are more common to national accountants, is a productive activity. So we are talking about production of goods and provision of services, and drug trafficking groups and the actors that are trafficking in drugs are operating for making profits. The basic process is really simple. So actors, drug traffickers, drug trafficking groups sell drugs in these several markets in several countries. And out of these selling drugs, they make the so-called revenue, which in the terminology of national accountants can be called illicit gross output. At the same time, to running this business, drug trafficker bears some costs. And these are, in the terminology of national accountants, illicit, the so-called illicit intermediate expenditure. The gain that is made by trafficking organization are the so-called profits, and these profits are obtained as revenues minus costs. Very simple. Let's say drug traffickers not only sell drug domestically, but also international and transnational drug trafficking involves cross-border activities and a lot of transactions related to the drugs moved from one country to the other along the entire supply chain until the end consumer. This means that the illicit gross output, so the revenues, have a domestic component and a cross-border component. And this cross-border component is directly associated with the inward illicit financial flows. So whenever it happens an export of drugs, there is a corresponding inward illicit financial flows according to the concept we try to give in this presentation. At the same time, in the part of the costs that are there by a drug trafficking organization imply the purchase of intermediate products or inputs that can be purchased in the country or across the border. And this implies some import of, let's say, a precursor for producing drug or any chemical input that is used in the processing and manufacturing of drugs until the end products. These imports generate outward illicit financial flows. Then again, the illicit gross output minus illicit intermediate expenditure generate illicit net income. I won't touch much on the income management part, but just to say that once the profits are made by trafficking organization, then these profits can be moved abroad and invested and consumed in different countries. So these are also associated with inward and outward illicit financial flows. To estimate the revenues, so the income generation and the illicit gross output, we have to estimate the value of the market. And this value is simply given by the simple economic relationship of quantity times price. So in this case, the quantity of drugs that have been sold times the price that have been cashed in by a drug trafficking organization. How this becomes relevant to all aggregates we just showed before, but particularly for estimating drug quantities, the mode is not a simple task. So estimating the quantities that are traded in a market, a specific market, is not simple. But in some sense, for national accounts especially, it may become simple when we talk about a supply-demand equation balance, where the supply is given by the production of illicit drugs. So from the cultivation of the production, in case we talk about plant-based drugs, plus the imports, minus seizure make the supply, whereas the demand is represented by the consumption of the drugs in the country in a certain time and the export from other countries. And these, we know that import and export are associated respectively with outward and inward illicit financial flows. So when it comes to this equation and all these aggregates we see in this equation, basically every country can apply and estimate the value, not the value, but the quantity of drugs supplied and requested by the country using this equation. Some countries don't have production, but this means simply that that part of the equation will be equal to 0. And then what the country, for example, what we can say a transit country.
Boa tarde. Desculpa interromper, mas o slide não está a mexer.
The slides are not moving. Do you maybe?
Yeah, o slide.
Okay, you maybe just. Can you see me now?
Yes, right now.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Diana, can you also slow down just a little bit? Thanks. Great. And if you can just make them slightly bigger because they're not in slide sharing mode, which is fine.
Yeah, because with the slideshow, I was before with the slideshow, so and okay. I could move them, but it couldn't show.
Okay, just make it
could
slightly
you see
smaller.
better?
I think just a bit smaller. That's great. Perfect. Thank you. And then if you can,
I apologize.
No, that's perfect. Proceed. Thank you.
So this is just to say that basically for estimating the first steps for estimating illicit financial flows comes through the estimation of basically production and consumption to facilitate the estimation of imports and exports, which are directly related to illicit financial flows. For the estimation of production, maybe some African countries are not producing many drugs, but still there is production, for example, relevant production of cannabis. And this requires for the estimating such production, requires the availability of a number of indicators on production, such as the area under illicit crop cultivation, crop yield, to get, for example, an estimate of cannabis herb or hashish, and other indicators that are necessary to understand which type of input and how many inputs are required to process and then give the final product. Estimate the quantities. For the consumption, for which most, let's say, countries in the world, if not all countries in the world, are affected for any type of illicit drugs, typical indicators that we can use for estimating consumption is the prevalence of illicit drug use, usually collected by survey data, and also the data on frequency of illicit drugs is necessary to understand how much is used by capita and combined with the average amount of used drugs by capita. This is usually collected sometimes through surveys, but also sometimes through studies. This is just to say that to come to an end on the key data for estimating such illicit financial flows from drug market is not only necessary to collect data on quantities and prices, but also is essential to get some data on the actors and routes, because and I don't know if you remember, but in the case of the drug trafficking, is necessary that there is an exchange between actors across the borders. So we have to make sure that there is a transfer of products across the borders. As well as understanding the routes will make clear what are the prices and what are tired of exports and imports. And the geographical coverage of data needed is not just only national, but very often an approach that analyzes the roots regardless of the single national type of data is necessary to get an estimate of such flows. I will stop here and I will pass to Imkar maybe.
Thank you, Diana.
Irmgard, if you can just speak slow for the interpreters. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Diana. I hope you can see my slides. We perhaps to follow up on Diana's presentation, we have used this framework in a research that we did on value chains and illicit financial flows from the trade in ivory and rhino horn. The results were published in the World Wildlife Crime Report in 2020. And we exactly did the same approach, the bottom-up approach, where we estimated the amounts that are produced, the amounts—
Imgard, can you just wait, please? We can't see your slides. Diana, can you stop sharing, please?
I'm sorry.
Fine, great. Great, thank you. Perfect. You can proceed. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. So the research was presented in the World Wildlife Crime Report 2020, and all the results can be read there. So to discuss perhaps the basic, the principles behind the research, we wanted to do a global analysis. So in contrast to the SDG measurements at the country level, we looked at global supply chains from the source to the destination and looked at the illicit financial flows that are occurring at each step of the supply chain. The supply chain here is the poachers is all the actors that are organizing the trade. So in the case of wildlife, it starts with poachers. Then the product is sold onwards to runners or brokers, then to intermediaries, then to exporters and importers, then to wholesale traders, and then to retail traders. Some of these actors are located close to the source, which would be in this case Africa for ivory and rhino horn, and some of them are located in the destination markets.
Sorry, could you increase the font, please? Could you increase the font, please? The font, please.
Is it better like this?
Yeah, I'll put it in presentation mode.
Yeah, no, can you see it in presentation mode? Or can you see now it's really, I cannot see it. That's a little bit.
No, I think it was in presentation mode.
Now you changed this, yeah.
Yeah, Zoom does allow you to actually increase the size of the presentation on your own screen.
So maybe I try like this. So at each stage of these actors, which is an abstraction of what is going on in reality, of course, financial flows can occur. So if a poacher is selling it to a runner and a broker, and both of them are in different countries, it's an export, and then we have a corresponding illicit financial import. The same goes if steps are not directly done. So if, for example, an intermediary would directly make business with a retailer at the end of the supply chain, it would be only one illicit financial flow. So the illicit financial flows in this case is the volume of transactions that are occurring across a border. In income generation, this would mean it would be directly related to the trade of an illicit good or service. In income management, it would be the use of the money that has been generated. What was crucial for that was the supply, so the overall amounts traded. And here we used estimates for the numbers of poached elephants and data on the number of poached rhinos, and then just extrapolated on the tons. And this multiplied with the prices yielded an illicit income. That was the amount of money that was made, and that we could break down by the supply chain actors. What needs to be understood, perhaps, there are many estimates out there that are talking about illicit financial flows, that are talking about the value of wildlife crime or the value of a certain activity. Some of these numbers, which are usually very high, include average estimated economic loss from taxation, environmental costs, natural resources, and potential tourism losses. Others that are the ones that we are looking for, are really focusing on the volume of illicit transactions and are focusing on the illicit revenues that are made throughout the entire supply chain. And these are lower than such a comprehensive estimate that would include much more. That's perhaps for understanding because it's often misunderstood. Here, a quick summary. Illicit financial flows are cross-border flows, and so on and so forth. We have already covered that. Some of the findings were that the more complex the supply chain, the more potential for IFF, because the more transactions are made. The location of the actors matters. The more diverse, the larger the potential for IFF. So the longer the supply chains are, the more transactions are made, the more illicit financial flows are occurring. And then in the case of ivory and rhino horn, ivory tends to have more complex and diverse supply chains than rhino horn, and thus the potential illicit financial flows stemming from the trade are much larger. Broken down on the country level, this would mean that it's crucial to understand the price data. It's crucial to understand who is doing business with whom. So the actors within a country, with whom are they doing business with? What are the prices that they are getting for the products that they are exporting or importing? And that's not easy because we are talking illicit goods here. So there's no official statistics on these prices. And that was one of the major data gaps that we have identified, that price data for wildlife products is not systematically monitored. And that would be very, very important for understanding the illicit financial flows that are stemming from this illegal activity. Likewise, qualitative and quantitative information on the trade flows are scarce. So here more information about the amounts purchased, the amounts exported, the amounts produced would be necessary as well to get estimates that are broken down to smaller entities. So not these global or regional estimates, but rather country level estimates. Here's a link to the report for those interested. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or send us an email. That's not a problem at all as well. Thank you very much.
Super, thank you so much, Irmgard and Diana. That was very interesting. I'm going to hand over to Amandine, who's actually going to present the pilot activities and some of the steps and tools and resources that are available. So Amandine, over to you.
Okay. Do you...
We can see your screen. That's great. If you can just put it into slide mode, please.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Here. Here it's fine.
It's fine. It's on the duplicate. That's perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
OK. Je vais faire ma présentation en français. Bonjour tout le monde. Donc, en tant que chargée de projet, je vais vous présenter un aperçu général du projet de la CEA et de la CNUSED. Dans un premier temps, donc, voici quelques informations par rapport au calendrier et aux activités qui sont planifiées. Donc, comme vous pouvez le voir ici, nous nous trouvons donc au début des activités pilotes qui vont se manifester dans une période de 6 mois, de juin à novembre. Mais avant ça, il y a eu d'autres processus, notamment les directives méthodologiques préparées par la CNUSED sur la mesure statistique des flux financiers illicites fiscaux et commerciaux, qui va être finalisée en juillet, fin juin, et qui sera du coup présentée en juillet à toutes les agences nationales des pays pilotes. Et en février 2021, nous avons commencé avec un séminaire régional pour approcher les pays africains qui étaient intéressés à rejoindre notre projet. Et depuis février jusqu'à mi-juin, nous avons donc eu une sélection des pays pilotes en Afrique qui ont rejoint ce projet. Donc maintenant, nous commençons donc les activités pilotes et nous préparons des séances de formation sur les méthodes statistiques qui commenceront normalement en août-septembre jusqu'à octobre, pour ensuite avoir une phase de production d'estimation en septembre, octobre jusqu'à novembre, et un rapport final en décembre. Donc, tout ceci est censé se passer en 6 mois, c'est ce que nous espérons. Il y a de grandes chances que le projet continue jusqu'en juin 2022 pour qu'on ait plus de temps pour les leçons apprises entre les pays et le partage d'informations. Et nous espérons aussi que ce projet et ces activités pourront continuer dans les pays, même une fois que ce projet en tant que tel sera terminé. Donc, pour résumer plus clairement les différentes étapes du projet, donc, comme je l'ai spécifié, en février, nous avons eu un atelier régional et un appel à manifestation d'intérêt auprès des pays africains. De février à mai, nous avons donc eu la sélection des pays pilotes qui ont rejoint le projet. Et en juin 2021, c'est où nous nous trouvons maintenant, nous avons notre atelier de lancement des pilotes. D'ici août 2021, nous aurons du coup un examen et une collecte des données dans les pays pilotes participant au projet. Et d'ici septembre, nous commencerons ou nous aurons terminé les formations dans chaque pays sur les méthodes statistiques de flux financiers, commerciaux et fiscaux en ce qui concerne la CNUSED. Et d'ici novembre, nous espérons la compilation des estimations pour un rapport final en décembre 2021. Concernant les différents pays qui ont manifesté un intérêt et qui vont prendre part au projet sur les flux financiers illicites, nous en avons 13 qui sont listés à droite de l'écran. Nous voulons souligner, déjà remercier tous ces pays-là de nous rejoindre dans ce projet qui est extrêmement important, et aussi souligner que la question des flux financiers illicites n'est pas seulement une question africaine. Comme nos collègues de l'ONUDC l'ont mentionné hier, ils ont eu un projet en Amérique latine avec plusieurs pays en ce qui concerne les flux financiers illicites reliés au crime. Nous commençons aussi un projet maintenant en Asie avec l'ONUDC et la Commission économique et sociale pour l'Asie et le Pacifique qui coordonne ce projet avec différents pays, le Vietnam, le Bangladesh, les Maldives, le Népal, le Kirghizistan et l'Ouzbékistan. Et nous avons aussi le Brésil et la Finlande qui sont intéressés à tester certaines des méthodologies que nous proposons. Donc, ce projet, il entre en fait dans une problématique qui est globale et qui n'est pas seulement africaine. Donc, ce projet fait partie de quelque chose de très grand. Concernant les outils et les ressources que nous mettons à disposition des agences nationales dans chaque pays, nous avons le cadre conceptuel qui a été expliqué hier par mon collègue de la CNUSED et de l'ONUDC. Nous avons les directives méthodologiques qui viennent d'être expliquées par mon collègue Boyan. Et dans ces directives méthodologiques, nous avons 2 parties aussi essentielles, dont la partie 3, qui est un conseil aux autorités nationales, donc qui sert de guide, qui fournit des conseils sur les mesures à prendre pour commencer à compiler les estimations des flux financiers, fiscaux et commerciaux. Et les outils qui sont listés sur ce slide font partie de la partie 4 des directives méthodologiques, et tous ces outils seront mis à disposition des agences nationales dans chaque pays pour mettre en œuvre les activités du projet. Et bien sûr, nous sommes là pour répondre à quoi que ce soit comme question tout au long du projet. Cela m'amène à parler du rôle crucial des consultants nationaux. Donc, la CEA et la CNUSED engagent des consultants nationaux dans chaque pays pour soutenir le travail des agences nationales dans la mise en place des activités du projet. Nous avons terminé la sélection de ces consultants nationaux que nous allons présenter un peu plus tard dans la réunion. Et ces consultants nationaux ont un rôle essentiel de soutenir, comme il est écrit, les autorités nationales dans l'essai pilote de la mesure de certains flux financiers illicites qui seront choisis dans chaque pays. Donc, comme il est souligné ici, il y a plusieurs activités que ces consultants nationaux vont mettre en place avec les agences nationales et les experts qui feront partie de ce groupe de travail technique qui sera créé et qui travaillera sur les différentes activités du projet. Donc, nous, entre guillemets, mettons à disposition ces consultants nationaux pour aider à la mise en œuvre de ce projet-là. Et finalement, l'équipe du projet qui travaille sur ces questions de flux financiers illicites, mais surtout de mesures statistiques, se trouve à Addis Abeba avec la CEA et leur division macroéconomie et gouvernance. Et la CEA gère et coordonne l'entièreté du projet en Afrique avec les différents pays nommés précédemment. Nous avons la CNUSED où nous sommes basés à Genève en Suisse, avec la Direction générale des statistiques et de l'information sur le développement. Et nous proposons, comme a fait mon collègue Boyan, des méthodes statistiques pour la mesure des flux financiers qui sont reliés fiscaux et commerciaux. Et nous apportons un soutien technique pour tout ce qui est formation sur ces mesures statistiques. Et nous avons nos collègues de l'ONUDC à Vienne, avec la Direction de la recherche et de l'analyse des tendances, qui eux donnent des développements méthodologiques et statistiques sur tout ce qui touche aux flux financiers illicites reliés au crime, comme Diana et Irmgard viennent d'expliquer. Donc ça, c'est l'équipe globale du projet. Et comme vous pouvez le voir, nous parlons français, anglais. Nous devons nous évoluer un peu sur le portugais, mais nous ferons de notre mieux pour communiquer aussi en portugais. Voilà, merci beaucoup pour votre attention et je redonne la parole à Cathy. Et nous sommes vraiment ravis de vous avoir tous ici aujourd'hui et de pouvoir vous rencontrer et commencer ces activités.
Thanks, Amandine. I'm assuming you don't have a slide of the national consultants. Can I hand that over to Douglas to present, if that's okay? Douglas?
Sorry?
Are you going to be presenting the national consultant team?
Okay. I thought Alan was going to, but...
Oh, is Alan going to do that? Okay, no, that's great. Then we'll do that. Alan, do you want to do that now quickly?
I think, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here and just say that we have 12 countries on the call, and we have we've been in the process of recruiting national consultants. As Amandine has just explained, these are helping us in these initial moments of the project to try to carry out the in-country activities. And so far, we have Said Dade from Mozambique, and I think they are on the call. Or let me just say generally, we are going to do two things. I'm just going to mention names now. We have got focal points for each country, and the focal points are going to get in touch with you to introduce the national consultants so that we can start working with them in country. So what I'll do is let me do two things at the same time. I'm going to introduce the focal points who have already been in touch with you, but also I'm going to mention the names where we have consultants so that you know, at least you know the names. Now you're torpedoing what I was going to say at the end of the whole session. But part of what I was going to say was that we are going to have to put all this information on the website, and it will contain the coordinates for individual national consultants so that you within each country can approach them and you can coordinate and do things together. So let me just quickly run through this. Mozambique, whose focal point is Fazana. The national consultant is Saidi Dade. And I said this, and I apologize in advance, I might be mispronouncing names. But anyway, you know the spirit. It is all positive. Burkina Faso, whose focal point is Douglas. It is Elimane Kane or Kane. Namibia, whose focal person is Fazana. Namibia, the focal person is Susan, I think.
Fazana, yeah.
It is Susan or Fazana?
Fazana.
Fazana. The national consultant is Lamek Odada. You heard him today. Gabon, whose focal person is Douglas. We have Tuka Charles. Nigeria, whose focal person is Susan Karungi. The local consultant is Professor Babajide Fowowe. Cameroon, whose focal person is Amandine. We have Jean Mbala. Ghana, whose focal person is Amandine. We have Bishop Akolgo. Benin, whose focal person is also Amandine. We have Symphorien Abesaji. South Africa, whose focal person is Kathy Nicolau and Alan Mkungu. We have Tulani Shongwe. Then we are still in search for the national consultant for Angola, whose focal person is Susan Karungi, and haven't yet seen the feedback on the national consultant for Senegal, but the focal person is Amandine, and also
for Senegal, it's Amaisi.
Is it?
Amaisi, Monsieur Amaisi.
Monsieur Amaisi. Wonderful. Sorry, I missed that one. You see. Then the last one is Zambia, because we've been mobilizing Zambia. Zambia has joined a bit late. We are still looking for the focal pass for the consultant, but we shall be letting you know very soon. And the focal person is Fazana, isn't it? Wonderful. So I think this is what you asked me to do, Kathy.
Thank you, Alan. That was very helpful as well, especially since we were looking at some of the sort of pilot steps. Obviously, I'll ask you to close up a little bit later, but I'd like to open the floor to some questions around what you've heard around the various methodologies. Just before I do that, very briefly, what we have heard is that we'd like to focus more on statistical approaches rather than econometric, but not that we're going to throw the econometric methodologies away. The important thing is that in the process of trying to pilot the methodologies that are in your country, it's ideal to look for the methodologies that are most relevant based on the different types of data and the capacity that we have. We'd actually like to use the pilot studies to try and see what lessons we can learn from this, and obviously refine the methodologies from the findings of your pilot studies. The most important thing is that this is your process. We're trying to build capacity in your country to be able to quantify IFFs and collect the data and clean it and disseminate it, which is the most important part of this journey. Through that process, we'd like to try and see how much we can learn to enrich the process so that we can also produce some summary statistics as we've seen in the UNODC studies so far for the African continent. So with that, if you can please put up your hand so that we can open the floor to questions, and then you can unmute yourself. Great. Dr. Mike, can I open to you, and then to Angela Alou straight after that?
That's great. No, thank you very much, Kathy, for the opportunity. No, thanks for the presenters. Really, the presentations have been very helpful and highly appreciated. I have one question for Bojan in particular, and that is around the methodologies. And I do note that we are going to be using the other part, of the methodologies, as it were. So what I wanted to just check is, in case a jurisdiction then opts to use more than one methodology, I suppose for the purposes of triangulating the data and also to come up with something more concrete. If the two findings arising from the two methodologies deployed at a particular point in time, if their findings are kind of contradictory, is there a particular reconciling approach that has been built into the process? Thank you very much.
A great question, Mike. Angela?
Okay. Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay. Mine is actually more of a contribution than a question. So I've been part of a project that's been measuring IFFs in various parts of the world. So there's a pilot done in Ghana, and then in Laos and in Switzerland, using both the partner country and the price filter methods. So I just wanted to share that. And one of the things that the project made use of was bearing in mind the various limitations of both the price filter and then the partner country trade gap method. We went with specific commodities. So for instance, in Ghana, because we are well known for gold and cocoa, we focused on those ones. And then we triangulated data and then tried to make use of qualitative research, since even for various commodities, the value chains differ slightly. So those were some other things that we made use of. All right, thank you very much.
We'd appreciate if you could share that particular study with us. I'm sure Bojan would appreciate that. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. My French is appalling. So Raimi, you're next, and then Lamek, and then I'm going to hand over to Bojan to respond.
Ok, merci beaucoup pour l'organisation de ce séminaire que nous trouvons vraiment intéressant. Et nous apprécions aussi tout le dispositif de communication qui avait été mis en place avant le démarrage hier et aujourd'hui. Alors, les thématiques présentées dans le cadre de la mesure des flux financiers, pour les pays qui sont en avance, nous avons trouvé beaucoup des éléments intéressants qui pourront nous inspirer aussi dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre chez nous ici au Bénin. Je voudrais saluer déjà notre point focal qui est Amandine, avec qui nous échangeons déjà. Et saluer aussi le consultant qui est mis à notre disposition pour l'entreprise de cette activité. Et nous notons que nous allons faire tout possible pour ne pas décevoir, puisque ça entre dans le cadre de la mesure d'un certain nombre d'indicateurs et pour pouvoir soutenir un peu la réalisation des ODD. C'est vrai qu'au Bénin, nous avons déjà fait une présentation et nous n'avons pas voulu trop charger parce que depuis un certain nombre d'années, nous avons aussi entrepris quelques expériences de mesure par rapport aux informations non enregistrées par les circuits formels. Je vais parler notamment du commerce extérieur non enregistré via nos frontières qui sont un peu poreuses. Il y a aussi une activité qui est en cours de préparation ici, notamment dans la consommation de la drogue, la cigarette, qui ne prend pas souvent pas des circuits formels ou bien des fraudes qui sont enregistrées. Et cette activité va être achevée, disons, courant septembre complètement. Parce que ces éléments vont permettre d'améliorer aussi les statistiques sur les flux financiers illicites. Alors, pour revenir sur la question technique, par exemple, dans le domaine des industries extractives, l'extraction, l'activité extractive, c'est vrai que quand on entreprend ça, il y a beaucoup de choses qui nous échappent avec le développement actuel de l'urbanisation et autres. Et quand on va vouloir mettre en place un dispositif pour contrôler ça, il forcément, peut-être qu'on va instaurer une taxation. Et quand on taxe, ça peut inciter le développement de l'activité encore. Et puis, la question du changement climatique, environnement peut prendre un coup. Donc, il y a un couteau à double tranchant que nous essayons de pouvoir identifier là. Et on se dit, bon, cette expérience peut être ce que nous allons peut-être explorer chez nous au Bénin avec les fausses déclarations aussi enregistrées au niveau du fisc. Je veux parler de l'impôt, la fiscalité intérieure. Voilà, merci beaucoup pour tout ce qui a été présenté. Et nous espérons aussi prendre contact avec le consultant national qui, je ne doute pas, pourra faire le travail avec nous. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Lamek?
Thank you very much. My suggestion would have been, instead of us sticking to one methodology, it would be very interesting, if possible, we use the two methodologies, because those methodologies will definitely give us different results. And for us to achieve the objective, it's better we work with more answers than limited answers. So if flexibility allows, time allows, my suggestion and request would be, let's use the two methodologies. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think it talks a little bit to the question that Dr. Masiapata actually asked, you know, what happens when you have contradicting findings? Remember that these are models and estimates. So ideally, you want to have as many models to try and bring as much out to light when you're looking at illicit activities. And in South Africa, we had, come up with a series of models and try and see whether they told a comprehensive story. Boyan, can you answer Mike's question and maybe sort of reflect a little bit on Lamek? And then I'm going to hand over to Nilton to ask his question.
Yes, thank you. So of course, I mean, the first answer would be, this is a great question, which means I have no idea what to respond. But of course, there are multiple layers to respond to this. So one of it is what has been said by Lamek, and what you also, Kathy, already mentioned, is that specifically in the area of the unobserved or the illicit, which is by definition hidden, which means that what we are observing are only traces those activities leave in the official economy. So which means that, of course, also by definition, we will always have some level of inaccuracy, meaning that if we can bring on the measures to triangulate either the methods or the data sources, or even both, this will give us some sort of a range, which is always better than just a point estimate. So in terms of what happens if I have two methods and then, of course, two results for, let's say, the trade mispricing. Well, in this case, of course, one of the methods that we have proposed, we have used, so a pair of methods for each of the categories, they are what we haven't presented today, but of course is a part of the guidelines, is that those methods are tier classified. So we have introduced 3 tiers, tier 1 being a method which we suggest to be used. Now, if certain circumstances, data unavailability, limitations in the capacities, or whatever other national circumstances cannot allow you to use method tier number 1, then of course use method which is evaluated as tier number 2. So this would be a fallback option. If none of those methods can be achieved or applied, then of course you can use as a method of last resort, so to say, method number 3. Now, having said that, the results of method tier classified as tier number 1 should be considered of higher quality and of a more accurate number as a result. Of course, this does not answer the other part of the equation when we are dealing with the IFFs. We have seen yesterday that there are 4 main categories of the IFFs. Now, if we only look at the tax and commercial IFFs, we have presented 3 different areas or 3 different types of the IFFs. And you may remember from the presentation that those were as different circles, different sizes, but there were also some overlaps in between. So what happens if I estimate the trade misinvoicing and the profit shifting and the tax evasion? How can I then aggregate those things up? This is not a straightforward concept, is not a straightforward activity, because there is some overlap. There is also an overlap with the methodologies or the categories from the crime side. And this aggregation part into a single number for the indicator 1641 is still being, let's say, studied. So we are working hard, both the UNODC and UNCTAD, to see how we can aggregate those things up. So as of this moment, I do not have an answer to that question. We will have to see as we pilot test and we move along, how we can bring all those different measures into a single value, aggregated value. But for some of those things, let's say the overlap can be estimated to be a very of small size or a very limited effect. But generally speaking, I would say that the aggregation is a problem, but then if we compare 2 methods, the tier method number 1 is, let's say, considered of a higher quality. I hope I have responded to the question.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Boy. And there's just one question for Amandine, which you can think about while I open up to the floor to ask Nilton and Brian to come in. The question was asked by Eunicia, who says, wondering how the UN resident coordinator offices will be integrated into the different countries. They are crucial country level operationalization. I did not see them being mentioned as implementing partners. Perhaps they are plans. So I'm not sure if Amandine or Alan will answer that. Nilton, over to you and then to Brian, and then we can hand over to Amandine to follow up with this question, and then whoever the respective respondent should be.
Ok, muito boa tarde e muito obrigado. Antes de mais, também me juntar aos meus antecessores e felicitar pelas apresentações. Foram três temas distintos, um sobre comércio, o outro sobre drogas e o outro sobre florestas e fauna bravia. Eu penso que a experiência, falo do caso particular de Moçambique, para os 2 últimos pode ser um assunto bastante complexo, sobretudo na questão de como obter esses dados, porque, como disse muito bem os oradores, não são variáveis ou informações que são fáceis de serem encontradas. Talvez com o consultor a gente pode pensar como é que a gente pode chegar a eles, mas eu penso que o primeiro, relacionado com o comércio, é um pouco mais factível e por aí eu acho que a gente pode avançar. Mas a minha intervenção, eu tenho 2 pontos a colocar. O primeiro, de uma maneira geral, as apresentações metodológicas, eu esperava um pouco mais de conteúdo prático, na perspectiva de, por exemplo, indicar para cada um dos temas quais são as variáveis que a gente precisa obter ou recolher para fazer essas estimações, quais são os modelos, qual é a estrutura algébrica, por exemplo, para medir fluxos financeiros relacionados com drogas ou com comércio e por aí. Portanto, talvez seja prematuro essa exigência, talvez no futuro, quando formos fazer, como mencionou no cronograma, as sessões de formação, talvez nesse momento a gente pode ver este aspecto, mas era importante que logo já a gente ir familiarizando com que tipo de variáveis a gente pode ir atrás, que é para quando chegarmos já mais à frente, já temos uma ideia de como é que essas variáveis se encaixam. Certamente que há um modelo algébrico em que a gente pode colocar e temos o resultado. Esse era o primeiro aspecto. O segundo aspecto é que certamente isso vai representar uma atividade adicional para todos os integrantes, seja dos Institutos Nacionais de Estatística ou das outras instituições que vão fazer parte desse projeto. E, portanto, isso significa termos que dedicar um tempo adicional para responder tanto às expectativas deste projeto. Entretanto, não vamos parar com as nossas atividades nas nossas instituições. Portanto, gostava de saber como é que a UNECA e a organização está a pensar na forma de gerir isso. Será que há um sistema, um esquema de incentivos, por assim dizer, para que a gente possa, no meio de tudo isso, também dedicarmos uma parte do nosso tempo tanto para esse projeto? É por aí, e vou parar por aqui. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. Brian, I don't know if you've just left or if it's your question that you've asked in the chat.
Hi, good afternoon, Kathy, and everybody
How are
else.
you? Nice
I'm
to
doing
nice
well.
to hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure what is the expectation from pilot countries in as far as appointing the country consultant, is whether there's any expectation for us to assist, because I know that Fazana at some point, or I've seen an advertisement floating, but I do not know whether that appointment process is purely done by the focal point, or is there any expectation from us to assist? Thank you so much.
So great, thank you. So just to the first question that was asked in the chat, if Alan can take that, and if you can either answer Brian's question or maybe Amandine can come in.
Sorry, I'm answering the question on RCs.
Yes.
And the role of pilot countries in recruitment of national consultants. Okay.
You're a good student, Alan.
Yeah.
You're a good student.
Let me start with the RCs. It is a strategic decision by the Secretary General that in each country we have the resident coordinator's office to coordinate the UN activities in the country. Now, that role comes with at least 3, sometimes unkind activities that they have to do. It has got a logistical aspect because you are in the country and you know the country much better. So for us, agencies who are not based in that particular country, we look to you as our eyes to know what is happening in the country. For instance, if you want to identify interlocutors within the government system and the private sector, you are better placed to advise us. So that is one. It's not very logistical. But 2, on a substantive level, you read reports from governments, you read reports from other people, and then for us, we read limited reports about a country. So if we are to come and try to do some work in your country, where you are based, we might come with assumptions which are wrong. So on a substantive level, you check us, triangulate that information you have with what we have, and you guide us accordingly. Now, on the 3rd level, we can work hand in hand, but we know that you coordinate a lot of activities in the country, and it will be unfair for us to dump everything that we want on you. Wherever we can, we will work together hand in hand. In this particular case of this particular project, we have already, for instance, we have contacted different resident coordinators' office in different countries to try and help us identify national consultants who can help out. And like I said, the national consultants are helping us because of the COVID-19 limitations we have in terms of travel. We want internal travel as much as possible to be carried out freely within the SOPs that each country has applied. So we are going for the national consultants to help us do some of those things. Secondly, one of the things that we are expecting from this project in each country is to make sure that each country establishes a kind of interagency task force that is working on IFF issues. Now, in some countries, this already exists. In other countries, it doesn't exist. Where it does not exist, national consultants are helping us, working with the different agencies in the IFF ecosystem to try and establish this, so that once we have that, on a longer term basis, beyond just this measurement project, the country is able to engage intellectually and practically on the issues of measurements, because it's not just measurement for measurement's sake. It is measurement so that you can identify where the vulnerabilities are, and so that the country can actually address those vulnerabilities. And from a domestic resource mobilization perspective, address it and increase your resources so that you're able to address your development challenges. So in terms of RCs, in a simple term, they have a role, and each focal point is required to work with the RCs in the details. It will be you, the RCOs, the officers of the resident coordinators, to say, we are available, but only up to this extent. We can help you here and there, so that we can, and that will vary from one country to another. So the focal points will be working with you on a more granular basis in terms of the implementation of the project. Now, in terms of the countries, identifying consultants, the essence of this was that we were going to what do they call it? Publish, advertise. We're going to advertise this so that we can receive responses. And I think we try to do that. But one of the key things is that when you advertise for something that is as specialized as IFFs, sometimes there is noise in what you're saying. So sometimes we go to people, and actually, Brian, this would be good if you have some people that you can recommend, that then we can engage with and see. The role is very simple. I think Amandine has already explained it to us. If you have some people, yes, for those countries especially that already do not have. The others which already have, we have already identified some consultants. We are going to work with those, at least for this 4 to 6 months initial period, where we are trying to do the initial estimates. And later on, we shall see how we establish that within the system to move things forward going forward. Have I answered the question? So
thank you. I just have one more question for you, which was a Portuguese question. Will it be feasible for the materialization of this project, a face-to-face exchange in each of the 13 countries, to verify the degree of implementation and continuation of the mechanisms designed here, to see if they're triggering, obviously addressing IFFs?
I think the spirit of the project is this. Someone said yesterday, if you cannot measure it, it is very difficult for you to try and address it. So where we're starting from, and I'm very glad that there are so many questions which have come in and questioning what is it that we are doing. If, for instance, we have all these methodologies and their variations and what have you, those are very important questions. And from a technical point of view, they need to be answered, and they've been answered. From the political side of things, which is what was raised yesterday, that we need the political will, but also we need the legal framework. The aim is, what is this supposed to do for the country? We are aiming to do 2 things. One, domestic resource mobilization, increase it. In terms of taxation, the governments need to get the money to do the development work in their countries. 2, if value has been created in Africa, we want that value to remain in Africa or to go out of Africa on our terms. Don't take it out illicitly. So if there is money that has been generated and it is in Africa, let it remain within the financial system so that it can fund other activities within the financial system in Africa. So that is the essence of where we are coming from. And so that is a bit more long-term. I wanted to put that in perspective, that's a bit more long-term. It has got a short-term nature, but also it has got a long-term nature. So for us, in terms of the different activities of countries, we would like to see that countries are diligently engaging with this, and it is helping them identify where the vulnerabilities are and the potential for recouping some of the monies and getting that money and putting it into development. And this is where we want the politicians to understand that this is not just a statistical exercise. It's an exercise that has got benefits to the country in terms of raising more resources for the country to be able to do. Rather than panhandling to other countries to give us money to do ABCD, let us use the money that has been generated in the country. So I don't know whether that kind of answers the question or there is an angle which I have missed from the Portuguese question.
Great. I've got 3 more questions and I'd like them to be quick if possible so that we can hand over to Anu and Alan just to close off. Regarding a comment that was made earlier on as to why the variables haven't been included, this is a very high level kickoff meeting. If you saw Amandine's presentation, we will be having training sessions where the details from the statistical guideline will come through, where you'll have a clear sense of what those indicators are. So to Mr. Omanda Nambo, then Emmanuel Chinyama, and then Helma Markau. Please, if you can keep your questions short, but go ahead. Mr. Omanda. Emmanuel, are you going ahead? I see you've unmuted, so
yeah,
proceed.
Okay. I can take the floor. My name is Emmanuel Chinyama. I am a former colleague of ICA, just joined the RCO 2 months ago in Zambia. So I just wanted to comment on what Alan has said. I think after leaving the ICA and coming here to the RCO office, the point Alan raised is very important. I think you need to use the RCO office indeed, because I think there are some challenges if you are operating from ICA. I've now come to see the reality, because I was also operating from that side. And when you come to a country, you need somebody as a focal point. So indeed, RCO has a big role to play, even in identifying the consultant. And given the fact that you have said that Zambia has just joined late, I could propose that we engage more, I think, in any further activities which you want to do with Zambia. That was the point I wanted to make, that we are ready to work with you, because you have said that Zambia has joined late. They don't have like a national consultant, and I think also the coordinator, if I heard it right. So we are here to help you, because we are really engaging with the government at the ground level. That's my comment I want to make. It's not a question. Thank you.
Kathy, you're muted.
Thanks, Alan. Eulalie, will you please ask your question?
Merci. C'est pas Eulalie, mais c'est son collègue. Donc, l'autre, le deuxième délégué de la NIF Gabon. Leka Roger, je m'appelle. Oui, ce n'est pas une question en tant que telle, c'était plutôt une doléance que je voudrais exprimer. Il nous a été assez difficile de suivre les présentations en anglais, parce que comme vous le savez, à NIF Gabon, nous, on est plutôt francophone. Nous avons eu beaucoup de mal à suivre la traduction. Je voulais m'assurer s'il était prévu que les présentations de tous les intervenants, ou du moins des plus importants parmi eux, pourront être disponibles en version en français pour nous permettre de véritablement mieux nous imprégner de ce que nous avons pu entendre aujourd'hui. Je vous remercie.
So they are included in the chat, but they will be circulated as well, and they are in French and English, but we will make sure that you have access to them. Helma, your question? Thank you.
Muito boa tarde. Bom, eu só quero fazer um pequeno comentário em relação a este assunto que estamos aqui a debater. Para mim, na nossa ótica, uma das grandes questões que tem a ver com a fuga ilícita de capitais está relacionada com os paraísos fiscais. O que é que nós, como África, como comunidade internacional, estamos aqui a pensar, fazer para permitir que seja possível rastrear os fundos quando esses alcancem essas regiões, como é o caso dos paraísos fiscais? Muito obrigado.
Elimane, last point, if it's just a quick question, please, and then I'd like to, I see Errol's also put up his hand. Very briefly.
Merci, rapidement. Une question d'ordre méthodologique. Parce que, vous savez, nous, quand on a proposé, manifester notre intérêt, c'était dans le cadre d'un collectif d'experts qui travaillent sur la question. Ma question, c'est comment travailler ensemble de façon collective tous les consultants nationaux et les points focaux pour harmoniser non seulement la méthodologie de l'approche, mais aussi même le plan de travail, ce qui permet d'échanger sur les spécificités des différents pays et aussi d'échanger en même temps des bonnes pratiques au moment où le travail se fait. C'était juste une suggestion comme ça que je voulais faire. Merci.
Great. And Errol, so Alan, when you are closing up, if you can just sort of think about that in your response. Errol?
Okay, thank you, Tracy, and thank you to all the very good presentations that we've received today. I think they're very useful. I just wanted to check with regards to the consultant. So who are we going to work with going forward? Are we going to work through the RC or the consultant? I'm just trying to better understand the role of the consultant in this case. Thanks.
Great stuff. So, Alan, I'm going to hand over. Can I just ask Anu to just briefly say some closing remarks? And then Alan, as you close, if you can address the last sort of 2 points, which are about coordination and how we proceed and wrap up, if that's okay with you. Anu, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Kathy. I just wanted to mention a few points going forward. On the support to the pilots, this will be a country-led process, but one that we plan to support closely from the United Nations side. And yes, ideally, this process will go with the support of the resident coordinator offices and the UNDP and all the structures that can help us in the countries who actually know what's going on in the national context and can help there. We have thought carefully about the pilot testing process as reflected by Amandine's presentation, and we'll share with you concrete tools which we hope will be helpful for you in the process and will guide you. I see there are 3 phases of the pilot. First is the review phase, when you look at the agencies and strengthen maybe the collaboration if needed, review data and assess statistical capacity. And after that phase, you probably have a clearer idea of the type of IFFs that actually can be measured in the country. Then we'll come in with the second phase of the pilot with the training and testing phase, where, as was requested by the previous comments, we would organize training on the specific methods that could be tested in the country with the data environment that you have there. And in that stage, we can facilitate collaboration between pilot country experts and can organize contacts with other countries who have already pilot tested or who are using some of the methods that we recommend. So we hope that we can then bring also those pilot countries that have selected the same types of IFFs to work together more closely. And then in the recap phase, when you are reporting back to the United Nations about the challenges you had, about the lessons learned, and you make an action plan on how to improve the data environment, the infrastructure, and address the statistical gaps in the short and longer term, we're hoping that this will in fact be a tool for you to showcase the need to invest in data, and that these action plans would then feed into further work on the national data infrastructure, the legal setup improvement, and the statistical capacity enhancement in the future, so that it will make possible the reporting on the 2030 agenda on the IFFs going forward. As was said by Boyan, we will continue the methodology development to come with generic guidance and a full classification of IFFs and how to aggregate the different types of IFFs together. This is a long process. It's been a long process. the lessons we learn from you will be crucial in when we go forward. And we hope there will be possibilities to share the results and discuss the findings next year in a workshop. Ideally, we could meet in person, but then we will see how, if the pandemic allows. Thank you very much. It's been really enlightening to listen to the discussions today. Back to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Alan. Over to you to actually final words and to close off the session. You're on mute, Alan.
Kathy, I'm uncomfortable. I see two hands there. I'm not sure whether they are.
No, we've answered all of them.
Legacy hands. Yeah.
All
Okay.
hands, yes.
I think Anu has said it. Let me just add a few nuggets, especially those that you have poked me with. We have been recording this session, and we are going to produce a report from this session. Of course, it will be available in English first, but we are also going to translate it into French and Portuguese. The presentations that have been made, we are also, some of them have already been translated in English and French, and we are in the process of translating them into Portuguese. So give us a little bit more time and everything will be in the 3 languages. Number 2, because we are talking about good practices, one of the good ones we also want to implement is that we try to learn from what it is that we are doing. So my colleagues are hounding me here saying, have you said anything about the evaluation of this particular workshop? Can you ask the participants to help us evaluate? Because we are going to have to carry out more activities and they would like your feedback so that we can plan future activities much better. So an evaluation, I think the link has been shared and it will be good if we hear from you on that. The other point has been focal points. I've already shared the focal points before and I was torpedoed for that. But again, we are going to have to send you information with the coordinates of each focal point. Then, of course, there is the issue of national consultants. Once we have the full complement of all the national consultants, we are going to share those. But we shall also share them on a country-by-country basis, given that you'll be working with these, and we don't want to waste more time, as we wait for others to do the recruitment. The other one is the coordination between the RCOs, the national consultants, and the UNECA colleagues. The focal points are there for reference to support the national consultants, just as the RCO offices are there to support the national consultants. In this particular case, the day-to-day running of the activities for the project are going to be run by the national consultants. And the national consultants will have to check back with the RCO offices and the focal points so that we can bring, I think they said comparable and standardized practice as much as possible. It can't be the same across all countries, to the implementation phase. Then in terms of, for instance, South Africa, I've got Kathy, who is based in South Africa, and we've got a national consultant there. And because South Africa has got already an established system and so many agencies which are working in this ecosystem, Kathy will work with the RCOs in South Africa.
Given what we need to discuss.
Kathy will work with the RCO system officers in South Africa to establish a system of how they're going to engage with the national consultant and the different agencies in the ecosystem of IFFs. And that is going to be the same system in each country. The focal points will work with the RCOs and agree with the national consultants on the roles and responsibilities, how often they meet, what they do, blah, 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 going forward. So that's the bit about coordination. Now, in terms of IFF measurements, this is just to round things up. I'm so excited that more than 150 people have kept with us throughout, and this number has gone all the way up to 100 at some time, and that the questions you're asking are pertinent questions. For someone who designed this project, I think they were smiling and saying, yes, these people are thinking in the right direction. So we are all on the same page and we are pushing in the same direction. It is important for us to know that it is not very scientific that it is either or, but that we are starting somewhere and trying to build on what exists in each country and seeing how best, given the circumstances in each country, we can measure these IFFs. I think there was a notion that it's not going to be comparable across, of course not going to be comparable across the board. In the questionnaires that you returned to us, some of you are saying we want tax evasion, others we are saying we want commercial, others we are saying criminal, others we want corruption. So it's not going to be uniform across the board. However, we are expecting that this being a scientific way of approach to things, there are methodologies that have been recommended. We will have to look at these methodologies, how they relate to the country conditions, and then we shall adjust accordingly within the countries. We are here, we have the technical expertise to engage with the countries to see some of those things. I think Boyan has already answered some of those with a very good answer of, we are looking at a range because we are not measuring everything. So it's not never going to be exact. So we shall have to have a range that tells us that actually, in terms of scale, IFFs are so bad for our country. And so this is some of the things that we are going to do. And for me, I think lastly, is that this is just the first step to alerting the policymakers that IFF is a big issue and they need to address it. We shall find other ways of trying to engage and build and galvanize the political will within each country. And if you have ideas, please share with us, because we don't have all those ideas. It would be good. I think different things work in different countries. So let me end by saying thank you very much, everybody, for giving us these 2 days and keeping with us, and also being so engaged. We have the interpreters who have done a fantabulous job trying to relay the different things that we are saying in different languages. I'm sure because of technologies, there are things that may not have gone well, but you know what? Next time we'll try to improve those. We have promised we are going to translate the information so that we can share it, and we are going to follow up with a comprehensive email which points you to the different places where you can go and access the many things we have promised we are going to share with you. I know that Amandine has been steadfastly sharing links all the time, but I'm going to have to ask them to try and compile all these links in a single document, so that you don't have to go back and forth trying to find particular information. Kathy, I think I better hand back to you. That's what I wanted to say. My director is excited. I've just been texting him and telling him what is going on here. And he said, we are on the right track. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Alan. So one step, you know, for man, and well, one step for man and one giant leap for mankind is really what we're doing in this process. So it's a giant leap for IFFs on the continent and how we curb them. And with that, I'd like to say thank you everyone for your time, and we look forward to engaging with you over the next 6 months. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Well done, Amandine.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Well done, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Merci.
Bye. Bye. Hello. Bye.
Merci à tous. Bye.
Au revoir.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye. Merci beaucoup.
Bye.
Tá.
Bye.
Não se
Bye,
desliga.
thank you.
Não se desliga. É só levar o, como chama? O mouse.